The gallery to the meeting for the City of Prospect for the 28th of June. And in doing so, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna, the people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, their beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Also read you the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. And welcome to all those who are joining us in the gallery today. Please be seated. On leave, we have nil, and apologies, we have Councillor Pearce as a late apology. Unwell, unfortunately. And number 4 is declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any such declarations for the meeting tonight? Deputy Mayor.
Potentially a perceived conflict of interest with one of the items as part of the budget that we're potentially feeding later on.
Item 10.1.
Being the president of the Eagles Cross Club is an item in there, which is a
Okay, CEO, we need some words for the minutes. So Jazz, as minute secretary, has got something there. So as an executive of a sporting club subject to leasing arrangements with the council, is that the?
I think there might be a budget item in there.
Oh, there's a budget item. There's an allocation of funds for
a shed and
a shed. Yeah.
I think the annual business plan, I think it's all exempt.
So it is exempt on every item. Governments. I think Deputy Mayor is pointing out that he's on the executive of a sporting club that's the budget allocates a storage shed to, which is a material item on that club's premises. So I think just wise to note it if that's okay. The rest of us are all ratepayers and subject to the financial outcomes, but we're covered by the class. It's a big class. But I think it's worth picking that one up. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any other declarations of a perception of a conflict of interest at all? Item 10.4 or 10.1 with the sorry, 10.1 is the budget, 10.4 with all of the fees and charges. No, okay, good. We'll move on then to confirmation of minutes. Somebody happy to move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting for the 24th of May be confirmed. Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to them? Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Public question time. We have a maximum period of 15 minutes, maximum time of 3 minutes per person. And we have a whole pile of guidelines, rules really, around how we deal with public question time, which those who wish to ask a question can get a hold of if they wish. Does any member of the gallery wish to ask the council a question at this point in public question time? No, there's no obligation. Please don't feel. I'm just looking to make sure I don't miss a hand. I'm not imploring you. Okay, thank you. There being none, we'll move on to item 7, petitions. At item 7.1, we have a petition regarding the Prospect Oval toilet. It's been distributed to all the elected members some weeks ago. The recommendation was on page 5 that we received a note to report the petition and advise the principal signatory that we have some money in the budget to deal with that item and had it in there for some months. So it's anyway happy to move that item as it's in the papers on page 5. Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
No.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot, wish to speak to it?
Just to point out, we've got money in the budget for this item.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp.
Just want to simply thank the signatories for bringing the issue that they care about to our attention.
Yep. Thank you. Any further debate? Concludes debate. Councillor Barnett, just to sum up.
No, thanks.
Okay, all those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Petitions received and has to some extent informed the budget as community feedback, which is very helpful. Now we receive a deputation on that same item. The first deputy is Rachel Sanderson on the replacement of the toilets at the North Adelaide Football Club. As per the petition, now invite Rachel to come forward. You can sit or stand if you wish.
5 minutes.
You've got 5 minutes. First of all, for the minutes, if you could state your name and address.
Sure. Rachel Sanderson and Walkerville. I'm a silent voter for many important reasons. But
Okay.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the council for both having the allocated money in the draft budget and for indicating your agreement and today at the meeting. I think it's important, even though the money was allocated in a draft budget, we've seen that many times in draft budgets, such as the electrification of Gawler was in 3 budgets before it actually came to pass. So it is important for you to understand how important those toilets are to the users of the Oval. The other parts of that petition really were the fact that it's poorly located. So if you are looking at replacing the toilets, that you perhaps consider moving them so that they are more accessible to people using the Memorial Gardens, because there are the concerts obviously and the Christmas carols and lots of events, multiple births functions that they have and lots of things that my Lions Club attend that would benefit from having toilets that were, if you relocate them within the Oval grounds still, however near the fence, that they could then be available to other public functions, they would have a lot more value to the community. So I just saw it as an opportunity not to repair, but actually to replace. The sight lines are dangerous where they are now, that were not as visible. So if you're taking children to the bathroom, for example, parents will need to stand right with them because you can't see them from where they are. And it's only really from taking other people's children to those bathrooms that I became very aware of the very poor condition that they were in and the need to upgrade those. So really just letting you know how important it was. James, who was here, took the petition around. I had COVID and I was at home and unable to attend the game that day. And he got over 247 signatures, I believe it was. And that was in one game on a day that the Crows were playing on the same day, and it was very poor weather. And he told me that only one person didn't sign, and that's because they barracked for a different team and they weren't aware of the toilets. But everybody that was asked was more than happy and could definitely see the need to replace those toilets. So thank you in anticipation, and I look forward to some new toilets that are really suitable for and accessible for children and elderly and all people that use the Oval and the Memorial Gardens.
Thank you. And as per normal, we'll open up for any questions from elected members. Councillor Harris.
Just a couple of points. I'm wondering if you realise, I think we played Norwood on the day that they done the petition, because most of the people that signed the petition came from Campbelltown, Norwood, Burnside, all that sort of town. I just wondered if you knew. Did we win that day?
Yes, we did.
My other question is more just a basic one. Where the toilet block is,
Yes,
and coming and your comments you made, particularly with Memorial Gardens, with people with the music and that sort of stuff. If to bring it around, it's the only grass bit that we have on that end of the Oval for people to sit on. So if the toilet doesn't go into that grass bit, then, and it stays, and I agree with you actually that it's well in the corner, but if it doesn't stay in there, we haven't, North Adelaide hasn't gotten the lighting.
There's a question in here somewhere.
Yeah, do you realise there's no lighting if we shift it around to be used by the festival, by the music in the park?
no, I wouldn't have known that, but the North Adelaide Football Club did receive a $1.5 million grant from the state government to redo all the women's change rooms, which are adjacent that area.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard if you needed to put power while they're doing that renovation to bring the power across. If you needed the lighting and the hand dryers would require power if you're putting hand dryers in. So that would be a great time to double up on that.
No worries. I didn't know who, I got no other questions.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Group.
Just a brief one. I was trying to just understand the logic around the placement of the toilets.
Yes,
So where were you suggesting they should be?
I'm trying to work out in directions what it would be. It would be southwest. So it's currently near the grandstand where there's that another liquor outlet and wherever people buy beer on that grandstand at the end, the southern end.
Yeah.
Right. So currently there would be Cafe Komodo has a little van and there's different food vans there sometimes. And right behind them is grass that nobody actually sits on or uses because those food trucks are in the way anyway, but you could put toilets there. They're very visible from the grandstand. They would be accessible from the Memorial Gardens side. And also like they're in a good spot where kids and families usually do stand around there, but not behind the food trucks. So that area is vacant quite often, and they do open up the gate near in the third quarter, so people can come and go. So then it is accessible as well on game days even. to the public.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
I think we could put a sign there instead saying there's toilets just over there. Well, that sounds like it might be a cheaper solution from a visibility point of view.
Putting toilets in a dark alley with an arrow pointing to the dark alley does not make them not in a dark alley. You know what I mean? Doesn't make them safe just because you're pointing at them. They leak, they have muddy entrances, they only have cold water only. The toilet paper is not accessible for children, they can't even reach it, it's on the back of the door. They leak from all of the skylights. They're cold, damp, and not visible for parents to watch their children to go to. They have to stand right there for safety, and they're not accessible on any other day other than game day to the people at the game. Whereas if they were moved, they would be accessible to the bowling club on a big game day. If they needed more toilets, they would be accessible to the Memorial Gardens. There are lots of picnics and lots of events. I was MC at a Christmas carols a few years ago, and all of the toilets that are there near the sound dome thing were all blocked and no one could use them. And we were trying to get the council to unblock them. There were no other toilets available. So that would also be a second lot of toilets that's available when we've got hundreds of families and children. Children can't wait when they need to go to the toilet. So, you know, having massive lineups of one set of toilets or toilets that are blocked and not working and no backup facility is not ideal. And you've already got the money allocated, like you said, and we've all voted on, I think it's a good idea. I'm just here to tell you how great an idea that is that the council has had and confirm that the community is right behind it.
Thank you. Any further debate? Sorry, any further questions of debate? No, there are no further questions. Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for coming to us, and acknowledge James Culshaw in the gallery there. Wave your hand again, James. You did all the hard work. Thank you very much for that. And we'll, unfortunately, no, James, we have a process dictated by state law that we have to follow because we have a former member of parliament here, and who knows what would happen if we got that wrong. So we'll move to the next deputy, Brendan Wen, who's going to talk to us about parking issues and possibly if you come forward and take the chair. And same routine, if you can state your name and address for the purpose of 16 minutes.
Trim 34 Ellerslie Avenue, Fitzroy.
Thank you, and you have 5 minutes.
Prepare to statement so I don't forget anything.
Yeah, very good.
The Local Government Act requires that a council responsive to the needs, interests and aspirations of individuals, groups within its community, and that it must seek to ensure that council resources are used together. We have a huge problem impacting our local business at this moment. This has been impacting businesses for some time now, yet nothing is getting done about it. A lot of us don't have the time to be able to attend meetings and continue to write to the council and not be heard. I am here today to speak about the ever-growing parking issue in the heart of Prospect. I'm the owner of Blossom Box Cove Florist, located on Prospect Road in Middle Street. We're actually celebrating our 6th birthday this week. From day one, I have loved being a part of Prospect, and I love our customers and our community. Parking has always been an issue, and over the years, it has gotten worse, especially with the new cinema complex, which has inadequate parking for the businesses alone. So their clientele are parking in the parking lot between Rose Street and Myrtle Street. This car park has 36 parks and 2 disabled parking. It services directly attached to a medical centre, 3 retail stores, a gym, a hair salon, 3 beauty services, 3 food outlets, and a co-working space. This includes Rosemont Hall, who aren't trading at the moment. It also services the surrounding businesses across the road, such as Morati, Komodo, Mecca Market, and much more. Obviously, we employ staff as well, so it's pretty clear that parking is limited for our customers and our staff. Earlier this year, there were 2-hour parking restrictions enforced along 6 side streets, which ended in May. This was extremely stressful for a lot of businesses and our staff. A lot of us received fines for parking over 2 hours, but in the unpredictability of work, staff were unable to leave their shift to move their cars, and consequently, they were penalised. Well, the other option was to park further down side streets. However, if their shift finished after 5 p.m, it would be dark. Staff voiced their discomfort and fear of walking alone in the dark to their vehicle. I often allowed my staff to leave and move their cars closer to the store during daylight so that they felt safe to get to their car after work. As an employer, I don't want my staff worrying about getting fines or stressing about their safety while getting to and from work. It's not fair on them to have to feel that way, and I feel a sense of responsibility for their safety and well-being. During the period, residents and council staff got parking permits, but what about the businesses and our staff? Why wasn't something done for us? We have run polls on our social media, and I've tagged the council in these also. We received so many comments and feedback about the parking issue. Almost 500 people voted on our poll, and 99% of people agreed that there was a parking issue in Prospect. I was upset with the feedback I was getting. I was shocked to find out that our customers were driving around the block, and if they couldn't find a park, they would actually leave and go elsewhere. This is detrimental to our businesses. We are losing our customers because of this. Most of the time, our customers are coming to pick up something or want to be able to run in and out. On several occasions, I would see customers parking on a yellow line or in a disabled park because they couldn't find any other park close by to collect flowers or grab their coffee. And many times I also see them getting fined. It upsets me that our customers are having to go through this experience. They're obviously going to be less inclined to come back to our businesses ultimately. I don't think it's fair that our customers are making the trip to Prospect from all over South Australia and then are leaving to go elsewhere, all because of the lack of car parking available. I struggle as a business owner to find parking to load and unload stock. Quite often I'm unloading boxes of stock and do need close access to carry them into the store. There is a loading zone directly in front of my store, but this is used by all businesses, the courier drivers and our customers. If I can't get to that car park, where am I meant to park to safely unload my car? Over the years, I have contributed to the council, donated flowers, prizes for events. I give back to the community, and I was proud to be a part of the Prospect Council.
1 minute if you need it.
In the last year, I've never been more disappointed with the council showing no leniency for businesses like myself trying to do the right thing. This has been quite disheartening, and I'm no longer happy to be part of the Prospect District. As a business owner, we have the constant struggles and daily stress of running our business, managing staff. This has been something that's been bothering me for some time now. I'm wasting my valuable time to make a stand for myself and other businesses, because the truth is our time is better invested in running our business than fighting the council about petty fines. If we don't get consultation about our issue and nothing's going to be done, I'll have to consider other options outside of Prospect. Prospect continues to grow and thrive with new businesses continuing to open. We just want to know what is going to be done about the parking for the Prospect community. It's great that Prospect has become the place to be, but let's think about a parking solution, so that continues to be before staff and customers are fed up with parking and fines, and ultimately Prospect becomes the place to stay away.
Perfect timing, thank you. We'll now open up for questions, if that's okay. Is there any questions, Deputy Mayor?
First of all, congratulations on 6 years. It's a huge effort to start a business up and turn it from, I share not very much to what it is today. So congratulations on that. If I gave you a massive container of money and said, here, tell us how we should solve the problem, because the people who are closest to it, the sort of people who can come up with the great ideas that we might not necessarily see because we're not as close to you. So what would you do to help alleviate the problem?
So obviously create more parking. I mean, if we had the space for it, this council chambers cost $18 million to build. This could have been a great facility for parking to help with the heart of Prospect, and it would have alleviated the parking issue for Prospect Road, new businesses opening up. I mean, yeah, there's parking behind Freeland that's going to be built soon. I'm not sure what is happening there, but that would be a great location for a multi-level car parking that will service the heart of Prospect. Our back car park, I don't know, like I'm not really familiar with this, but it would be great if we could create more parking for the whole community. So it's not just the staff, it's our customers and the business that we're losing, and customers that will end up leaving Prospect and not coming back, and ultimately businesses as well. We've had people, we have businesses that have been in offices upstairs that have been relocated because of parking issue. So, it is an issue that we really need to address.
Thanks. Further questions? I think just a question for myself. The Deputy Mayor's question is a really pertinent one, because I don't think any of us will argue. It's very, very frustrating. Are you aware that we've got a parking fund of about $440,000? that we have to spend solutions? Are you aware we've got that money?
No, I'm not aware.
Were you aware that every single property owner we've approached to pave their backyard and light it and make it available for public parking has refused to let us spend money on their property?
I'm not aware.
So, you're probably not aware too that, when we priced this building, out the back, we could have put 30 more car parks in, it would have cost us $3 million. It's $100,000 per car park. You're probably not aware of that, but it is estimated that a car park would cost about $50,000 per car park by knocking down a house to buy it, knock it down, convert it. Or we have explored other options and just can't get it happening.
Yeah.
Not because we don't want to.
Yeah.
But who do you think should be paying that $50,000 per car park?
Well, I'm very new to this, and obviously it's my frustration over the years that I'm now taking a stand for it, because it doesn't get better, and finding us is not gonna improve anything either. It's actually frustrating us and upsetting staff more. And I feel responsible for them getting fined for rocking up to work. But I don't know much about it, but all I know is that we need to come up with an issue, come up with a resolution. You know, in the next year, like, I'm having to contribute and help, like, figure out a way, like, for businesses, the community, just so that, you know, we can continue to run and thrive and grow customers.
Yeah, I think that's very generous. Are you aware we've got a parking policy coming to us in July that we've asked for it for some time? Probably not aware.
The 2-hour parking.
No, a whole review of the precinct. I could ask, are you aware that we've been asking for a precinct parking policy for 3 years, but that would be unfair. You wouldn't know that.
No.
But I believe something's coming to us in July. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, congratulations also on your 6 years.
Thank you.
And, yeah, and I think you do a wonderful display and what put out on the verge. So well done there. But, just, another, avenue perhaps with petitioning, that, there've been quite a few, state governments that, dictate our planning legislation, not council. Particularly the latest round of changes. And a lot of our frustration comes with planning law that says,
Let's get to a
the-
question.
yeah,
Councillor.
yes, soon, that my, and I feel your frustration, because we feel frustrated as well. And so are you aware that, under planning law, that businesses do not have to supply, a car park on their property for, say, if they like to employ 6 employees, there are no 6 car parks allocated.
Yeah.
So therefore you're driven out.
We'll take the question.
Yes.
If we're aware of that.
No, I'm not aware of that. I'm not really aware of a lot of, you know, the laws and legislations, but, you know, I will become aware of it in order for us to try to find a resolution. It's not just for the staff, it's for the community, it's for our customers, and then the residents will also find, you know, that they'll have parking space in front of their homes. So, you know, fixing one issue can fix all of the problems that we're currently facing for residents, staff, and the community.
Okay, Councillor Rick.
Yeah, probably a follow on from the mayor's question. How do you feel residents, the balance between businesses and residents nearby in terms of parking? Have you had any feedback from
Yeah.
residents?
Definitely, I've been there for 6 years, like the neighboring businesses, you know, they get their car parks taken up. You know, the house next to the car park, you know, they have a car park with a garage roll of fence that people park and they can't leave their property, you know, and they don't know who to contact to remove these cars, and they said that they've contacted the council, they'll come out an hour later, and they've been late for work because they aren't able to leave their car park because someone has parked in there directly in front of their garage roll of fence door. And obviously on Myrtle Street where we're on the side that we're on, yeah, the residents there are always fed up with people parking, you know, over the no standing zone because they're wanting to go get coffee or ride with flowers. So the yellow lines, people are constantly, like, people park there all the time because out of frustration of not being able to find a place to park. So yeah, our customers get fined all the time.
Oh, question.
Yep.
do you feel businesses in the area would be happy to pay more as part of the solution? Because obviously car parks, as the mayor's mentioned, are around 50,000 each. I don't have those figures, and there's probably more across that. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, obviously, going into residential rates and all that's going to be pretty, asking residents to pay 50,000, they're going to probably not be too thrilled about that per car park. Do you feel that there isn't, like, businesses would be happy to contribute towards a solution like that?
Well,
Because it's the ratepayer money as well. we've got to
yeah,
consider.
yeah. So I mean, if there was a plan in place over a period of time, you know, and whatever the council can fund was, I'm sure, yeah, we'd be happy to contribute there. Yeah. And that was viable for businesses and, yeah, for us to continue to run our businesses, obviously.
It's incredibly generous to say that. We don't often have people say this, but anyway, it's not a question. But thank you. Councillor Gruch and then Councillor.
Just have two quick questions. The first one is just in relation to the timing of parking issues. Do you have a sense of whether it's worse, you know, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, in the middle of the day? Do you have a sense of when is it the most acute?
It's probably around lunchtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, people, and like, this is with Sunny's and Rosemont closed at the moment, so just imagine when they're back in Brisbane, it's gonna be busier, on those two streets, Maple Street and Rose Street and car parking. But yeah, we're getting customers coming in and saying like, you know, it took them 20 minutes to find a park, and obviously they're frustrated. And then they're parking illegally and then getting fined, and that upsets me terribly that they've received a fine, but just coming to collect something from our business. Yeah, it's really harsh.
Yeah. And look, to your point about, you know, things will change when Rosemont Hall comes back up again. I can't wait. I'm missing my cheeseburger spring roll, so I'm looking forward to it. But my second question is, have you seen any examples of council areas that have done this really, really well? I'm not sure whether you've done much research, but
Familiar with, like, Prospect has, you know, is up and coming, like we're pretty much the place to be. And that's why so many businesses are coming here and wanting to be in this district. And, you know, I'm proud to represent Prospect. But like, there probably isn't another district that is as crazily compacted. Like Hyde Park has really died down a lot. So I don't find like there's many businesses and issues with parking. Now the next part I'm thinking is Norwood, but I feel like they've got adequate parking on the side streets and, you know, the businesses behind. So I feel like Prospect is, maybe I don't get out to other areas often as well, but obviously I'm in Prospect every day, so I notice it. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Thank you for coming in today and congratulations on your year, the president. I was just wondering, do you have a short-term solution for us that you could share with us? Obviously, this is a long-term issue and, you know, we
Yeah.
identified that this is like a major problem for the city.
Yeah.
What, do you have a short-term solution that you can share?
No, I literally am not, you know, this is not my field. I have no idea. The only other place I was thinking, like now knowing that that is being built, is that would be great because it's services for Heart Prospect, and if we can put up from behind, the customers can park from there and walk across, or our car park. But I really don't understand the laws around building behind that as well. But those two places, the big definitely in the Heart Prospect. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Any further questions? In the case, thank you so much for coming in with a very good statement. We are having further discussion in July. Rest assured, we are all really frustrated about trying to find an answer and not asking questions, making a statement. We worked incredibly hard with the owner of Foodland to try and get 2 floors of car park in there. End of the day, it just was financially absolutely out of the question for us. So that's very difficult for us to work out how to fix this. So we'd love your involvement and those also who are here tonight about that issue. In July, CEO, we could perhaps advertise a bit more broadly that we're going to discuss that. That would be very helpful for your input at that point. But thank you for coming tonight and for answering so many questions. Thank you. Now invite our next deputy, Corinne Garrett, along, who's the chair of our audit committee. If you could come forward, Corinne, and you're here to talk to us about the audit committee's activities over the last year as a regular attendee at our meetings and doing a great job chairing our audit committee meetings. So for purposes of the records, your name and address.
Corinne Garrett, 14 Jacobs Drive, Wellington.
And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So, hello again. I think I see you once again for this.
This has not been a normal year, I think, at all, and you'll be well and truly aware of this. Our normal functions of considering your long-term planning, your sustainability and your challenges with assets has been completely surpassed by some economic factors that the whole state, nation, perhaps further than that, are feeling. So just to give you a bit of an idea, so you don't think you're all on your own, we are looking at inflation of 7%. We are looking at inflation on capital projects across the state of 100% in the last 6 months. So everywhere, every council is facing their capital projects doubling in cost. So this brings us some significant challenges that we're going to have to all work through. We need to be financially sustainable as we go through. Nobody wants to increase rates to, you couldn't increase rates to cover what we're currently looking at. That I'm very pleased to see that 4.7 is in there at the moment in your rates to be debated tonight. I think it's very important that we keep up with inflation. I know that these inflation rates are not anything that community ratepayers have seen for many years, and 4.7 has now been completely blitzed by the latest inflation figures. So I think it's important for you to understand that those of us who are independents on the audit committee, we're there for the purposes to give you the unbiased. You don't have to worry about politics. We don't have to think about community expectations. We're just looking at the numbers and to give you a sense of understanding of your risk issues and your long-term viability and sustainability. So, and it's important that you understand that. It's not that we don't care about your communities, but that's your job. And I don't envy you at all at this point. I was at a meeting today and no one is willing to even guess when this might be finished or what is going to happen from now on. I was at a council last week. They have got a list of projects that they're looking at. They start with one, they get no tender responses, they move to the next one. They put in a order for a playground. It's a 10-month wait. There are no playgrounds in Australia. Really, I don't know how, but that's the case. So we're looking at some very difficult times, and our sympathies are with you, and we just want to work with you as we go through these next, I don't know what period, to try to keep us to an ability that can cope with this in the future.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask first question. Did you bring any good news?
No, I didn't. I'm really bad that I didn't. Because normally I'm full of praise about all the things you're doing, and I still am. It's just that the reality at the moment, the economic reality, is really challenging at this point. So I'm sorry, this year we don't have any bright sparks there.
Okay, I'll open up for questions from the members. Councillor Tobacco.
It's a good question. It's always good to hear some sensible words from you. Look, councils are legislated to deliver some services, and currently, I'm always keen to look at service levels and what we choose to do and what we have to do. I think we've currently got about $850,000–900,000 of discretionary spending. Is that something that other councils are looking at with their service levels?
So councils are really scratching their heads. So the first thing they're looking at, because service levels in operational are not big biggies compared to the cost of capital. So councils are now going, okay, new capital is fun. Do we hold our breath for a year? Just concentrate on renewal capital, keeping our assets as they are. Other councils are going, okay, let's look at service levels, which you should always be reviewing anyway to make sure they're appropriate for the community. How much do we want pain in that area to happen? Because sometimes in your operating area, the services that you provide mean a lot to your community, and they're not as expensive as those huge capital projects. Capital projects can take another year. There's councils that are going to just defer a whole lot of work, as long as that's not going to undermine the the levels of service that those assets are doing, as long as we don't create a safety issue or create a larger expense into the future. So certainly, you should always be reviewing the service levels to make sure they're still appropriate for your community. But they don't actually make the big difference that your capital assets do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rippon.
As you know, Corinne, we've been going through a whole review of our budget, obviously with the inflation figures and issues. And I know that obviously the independents have said, you know, you've really got to, as part of the feedback, that you've got to keep up with the rising inflation to cover your costs. If inflation continues, or obviously inflation, I beg your pardon, has continued to rise, and obviously with our 4.7%, that's not, we all know that's not keeping up with the full inflation rise. So we've, through our budget, been looking at, well, what kind of savings can we achieve out of our long-term financial plan? Not 1 year savings, what savings can we achieve with recurrent and long-term financial plan? So we, I guess, call it cuts, fine, call it cuts, and so to balance that. Do you have a view on, is that okay for councils to, I guess, not keep up with the rise in inflation if you're cutting services or cutting programs out of your long-term financial plan? Because that's what we've been looking at.
So, to be brutally honest, you can't cut enough. Because we're looking at it, when we're looking at capital assets doubling in cost in the last 6 months, it's ridiculous. And that's even if you can get them. There are no contractors, there's no material. And whether that comes out at the other end and reduces, some of this has been impacted by the significant grants that we got for economic stimulus, which is well and truly stimulated. So any grants you haven't spent, I half expect the government to turn around and go, you haven't even started. So our grants that we've got too, that might have been covering 50% of the asset cost, is not going to cover 50% of the asset cost, because the grants are not increasing in line with the asset cost. So there is no easy answer. There is absolutely. I always am concerned if rates do not increase with inflation, at least with CPI, because you're just making a rob for some future rate payer down there who's having to cope with the catch up because everything's got really too hard. So it's a really significant problem, and there is not a council in the state that's not scratching their heads at the moment going, what the heck are we supposed to do with this? So.
Councillor Barnett.
You could say we've all been caught up in a perfect storm.
Absolutely.
Do you think we're on track to somehow weather the storm? I mean, we most probably a dinghy out there in the biggest ocean.
Look, you are. We've got to kind of go back to the drawing board and review all the costings for our renewal assets and our asset management plans now, like all this new costings. But you don't have a significant debt level, like not to my thinking. Interest rates are going up, but you're in a healthy financial position at this point. It might not always feel like it, but long term you are. So you can weather these storms, but I guess the issue is that it's going to be some hard yards over the next probably 2 years, trying to work through how we deliver programs to our community without significantly changing that financial basis we're on.
Further questions? Can I ask if what's the best forecast you've seen in terms of any of these cost escalations? Are we talking the next annual budget cycle won't have the same sort of pressures, or are we likely to see this for longer than that? Or is
Well,
it
I
just too hard?
Here's a bit open. I did hear that general inflation should decrease over a couple of years. But what we're paying in assets is not at all come under general inflation, and is just being, I've never seen this. So this is really hard. As we, and there's a number of factors, like there's a war in Ukraine, there's petrol prices and diesel prices, and like, there's so many factors that we've never seen all together before. I think we all thought once we started to get through the worst of COVID, everything would be smooth sailing, and then this has kind of happened. Look, assets are very long-lived, so you do have a little bit of flexibility in that. Your major assets are not going to fail tomorrow, or the week after, or a month, or even a year. So you do have that ability, you just don't want to do that forever. On the asset side, I don't know. And I haven't found anybody else who does. So we're just, most people are just going, okay, maybe we just take a breath and think about this and just go a little bit slowly for a little bit. And then until this is over.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions? If there aren't any, on that sobering note, thank you, Ms. Garrett, for your annual presentation, and the candidate's always been in. Thank you so much for your honesty and your leadership of our audit committee. Thank you. That finishes the section on deputations. Just take questions without notice if there are any from any elected members. That being the case, now members of the gallery move to reports for decision, and you're more than welcome to stay for the council meeting, any part of it, or leave at any time. We'd love you to stay. The first time was on your annual business plan, which is the budget, which funds everything we do or don't do. But hey, if you don't want to stay, it's fine too. Thank you for your interest. Take care crossing the road, Maria. We have two members of the gallery staying for, thank you very much for your interest. Yeah. Well, stay for one item anyway, thanks. Okay, reports for decision, 10.1, the annual business plan and budget 2022-2023. We've come down to what we can actually do, everyone's left. That's how it is, I suppose, isn't it? Somebody happy to move it in its slightly amended form, and the CEO has distributed some information this afternoon. Who has not read the CEO's email this afternoon with these changes? Okay, I'll just give you a couple of minutes to catch up.
These are only 0.1 members that's changed. Oh, and dollar valuation amount. Yeah. So the
So just a quick question, is the revised mayoral statement, is that included in what was sent round?
No.
I didn't see it.
It has to be written after this resolution.
Oh, okay, fair
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be out of date, I suspect again.
hence the amendment.
Yeah, no, all
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
Any questions on those changes from staff? All right, if we just scroll up to the only other minor change in the recommendation you sent the agenda papers is that number there, item 5, a very slight change to the valuation amount. When I say slight, it's a $400,000. It's just picking up the latest data set from the Value General. So it's just getting as current as we can possibly get. Okay, no questions on any of those changes. Somebody happy to move it? Sorry, councillor.
Yeah, just before I was moving, I did send around about web an email. I'm just hoping that all councillors have had opportunity to read the reply. I asked about where we sat in terms of the 4.7% in relation to other metropolitan councils. So I'm just wondering if everybody saw that.
It's not specifically speaking a question around this changes to this item, but I see, some recognition there. And if not, go looking for it in your emails while the debate's happening, or you can bring it up during debate.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Well, it was a change because we went out with 3.5% and now it's
correct.
changed to 4.7%.
We'll let me deal with that in debate, I think, because that's not a question for staff and it's technical change. Can I just point out the second bullet point is very specific, because in the page 72 standardised explanation we've got to put there, it says 5.7, but it does allow us to put a comment in. So what the staff are saying is we'll put a comment in that says that, to make it really clear that we think average is 4.7, not 5.7. That's the point. Any other questions about these changes? If not, someone happy to move. I think Deputy Mayor wants to speak to it.
I will speak to it and also to get it on the floor, and keen to hear the thoughts of the other elected members. So I've been on, this is for eight, I think, eighth budget process that I've been through in my, funnily enough, 8 years on council. And both from a process point of view and also using data to inform our decisions, I feel like this is the best process that I've been through. So congratulations to the team who have helped drive the process and have been patient with the amount of scrutiny that we've put you all through. You were just saying, Chris, before how much you enjoyed all that scrutiny, so happy to oblige. What we did this year, more than any other year, not saying we haven't previously, is that we've evaluated every line item from many perspectives, with the end goal of taking the advice of the audit committee, but also squeezing the most value for money we can out of the money we've got for our community. As well put by Corinne, we're facing a whole lot of inputting factors that no one could have predicted, and it's a moving feast. And if we were doing this in a month's time, then the outcome might be different from what we see ahead of us today. But we do have the budget that we've put together. We went out to consultation, which we always do, and pleasing to see that we actually had what felt like a good amount of response from our consultation process. And in fact, the feedback we got caused us to reflect and make some changes to what we had originally gone out to consultation with. Particularly the business community expressed their concern, which I share their concern, with cutting a massive swathe through our budget, which we did for good reason, but we've reinstated some of that budget and reorganised how we're going to approach economic development and support business community, which, given the fact that O'Connell Street is now starting to come to life, I think that now's not the time to be sitting back and relaxing on our laurels for the good work we've done. We'll still to keep that energy and enthusiasm up. We've cut from every area of what we'd like to do. And as the Mayor himself has said a few times, and I think the former Deputy Mayor might agree as well, we used to have this great spreadsheet where we could all put forward our requests for spending, and I don't think they even bothered rolling the spreadsheet out this year at all, because it would have been a bit of a moot point. But it feels like we've got a reasonably good balance between maintaining what we do as a council that's always prided itself on doing more than roads, rates and rubbish, spreading the pain across all aspects of what we do in a responsible way, and putting forward a rate increase which is in line with CPI for South Australia, I believe. You know, there's almost no end to what that could have been if we actually wanted to keep up with what things are going to cost us to do, but this feels like it's a responsible thing to do, and I'm happy to have been part of that process and keen to hear the thoughts of the elected members on how they experienced it as well.
Thank you. Do I have a second then? Councillor at the back, if you wish to speak to it.
Yes, I do. Look, I'm very proud of how we've worked through this as a council, through several workshops and a few changes and a few surprises with increases to capital projects, looking down the barrel of what's going to come up in the next 10 years with flood mitigation, money for the election coming up in November. These are all things that we've had come out of left field. So I think I'm really proud of the way we've worked. It's been very challenging because no one likes looking at recurrent budget. No one likes pushing back parts. No one likes doing this. But one of the things that we, you know, it might not be our budget we love, but it can be one we live with. And I think all of our ratepayers, all of our businesses are facing increases to costs, increases to mortgages, increases to household rates, and electricity bills. So I think Corinne's wise words, you know, it would be, the reality is, you know, 7-8%, we could do whatever we like, but that's not what we're going to do to our rate base this year. And my biggest concern is the budget review process. And I would hate to think that some of the calculated costs that we've got have not considered enough, especially some of those big capital projects. And I'm disappointed beyond belief how far behind we are in some projects. And that's a real concern. So it's not just the cost of delivery, it's our ability to deliver. And that's the real concern with me. However, the good news, I guess, is that we are delivering a lot of great things without challenging our service levels too much. We couldn't do it without the support of our over 160 volunteers, I think we have, our community groups, our sporting clubs. They all deliver services to make the community works. So I think as well as obviously the dollars and cents, we have to think about the volunteer hours that goes into helping our City of Prospect run as it does. So I encourage you to support the budget.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Group.
This is extraordinary times, isn't it? We heard from Corinne two things she said, which really struck a chord with me. Our sympathies are with you. And I think that really sets the scene in terms of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to balance the budget. I've never heard an audit chair say that before, but I think what she said is absolutely 100% accurate. And thank you for your sympathy, I should say as well. And the second thing Corinne said was in relation to projects, you can't cut enough. And I think that's another sort of telling piece of context to the budget. I was thinking about my reference point to this process, and the Deputy Mayor stole some of my thunder. And I remember those great years where we would put up 10 projects each, and if we got 5, that was a bad year. And that is but a distant memory now. And what I'm probably advocating as strongly as I once did for cloth nappies, I know that if I tried to do that this year, I would have had absolutely zero chance of getting that up. But this is actually, for me, my short 12 years here, this has been the hardest budget. I think it's also, I would describe it as a low capacity budget. That's not an insult, but it's saying we're basically doing the bare minimum of what we need to do. There's not a lot of fat or scope to do things outside what we said we're going to do, and a lot of that is core business and a couple of projects. And I think that for me is another really telling tale that this is a difficult budget. And I've thought long and hard about whether how I support this or if I don't support it. Like every elected member, we walk in here with minds not made up and listen to the views of our learner colleagues to make that decision. I think too, this is very much a multi-year problem, and whoever's going to be sitting around this table in 12 months' time will be facing some of the same issues, no doubt. So costs are increasing. We know the cost of, which is the biggest cost for most organisations and the highest percentage of costs from an operating perspective in this organisation, is going to increase at a rate higher than we can probably afford. And we know that's going to continue to happen. So we know that this is a multi-year problem. And so hopefully the decisions we make today help set us up in a positive way for next year's budget and one after. We heard about inflation continuing to rise. That's going to happen. When I went through the budget, I thought about some of the things that really stood out to me. Loss of rates income for 205B Churchill Road. That's a direct impact on rates. The rate has gone up because of that decision point by the state government. Another sign that we're living in extraordinary times, average valuation increase of 28% in Prospect. That's incredible. The rate of the dollar, though, has decreased by 19%. And so these numbers are going all different directions in a way that we've never really seen before. Valuations going up, rate of the dollar going down, but rates going up. But I'm reminded of something, and it's always the lovely line I look to in our budget, and which is what is going to be the average impact for the average rate pay in Prospect. And for us right now, it's going to be $1.80 a week. I think we used to talk about that in terms of coffee. Well, that would probably pay for a quarter of a coffee now, not maybe half a coffee as it once did, but $94 per annum, $1.80 a week. So from that perspective, it's amazing that we've been able to achieve a budget that's going to give us effectively an average rate increase of $1.80 a week. And I think that's doing well, given all the circumstances and the context that we're working in. I just want to say a big thank you to staff. I do this every year because it's, I sit on the opposite side of this in my day job, and I know that the amount of work that goes into developing a budget, I think local government budgets are probably a bit trickier than most as well. So I just want to acknowledge the work of Chris and his team, and Ginny, wherever she may be in the world at the moment, no doubt her early contribution to this as well. But a big thank you to bring this forward. I look forward to asking my standard question every year about rates and who we've given rate rebates to. So you'll be no doubt ready for that, Chris, later on. But on balance, I'll support the budget, depending on what others have to say around the table. But I do that, not to put too much theatre into it, but with a bit of a heavy heart. Like, this is a tough budget to approve. And it's not done with, it's not done blindly, and it's not done without understanding the impact for people, the impact for our staff, who will be impacted by this budget. The impact of our ratepayers who are going to be affected by this budget. And that's the responsibility, however, given to us as elected members. And sometimes we have to make tough decisions, and this definitely feels like one tonight. So, thank you.
Councillor Rip.
I just want to first of all thank all of you around the table, council colleagues, but also the staff. It's definitely been the hardest, and the 8 budgets processes I've been through, this has definitely been by far the hardest. With obviously rising inflation and the pressures, and I won't harp on too much about that, but also want to thank Corinne and the independent members of the audit committee that have given great independent and sound advice that we've regularly relied upon in this process. And between councillors, staff and audit committee, and yeah, all of you have worked incredibly hard, incredibly long hours as well. And I thank the staff for that in particular. Feedback I've had from residents, I guess, across the board is they felt, when I've spoken to a few of them in East Ward, that we've had the right balance between keeping rate rises going to CPI and trying to find the right balance with savings. I have had some feedback though from residents that want us to further look at service review, or to review service levels to see whether we're hitting the mark and get that feedback right across the council. So I know Councillor Back has touched on that a few times as well through the process. And so having a look at those service reviews moving forward, I think is a great thing. For me, I know I was having a look before this to check if they've been updated. I know that the CPI figure to March was 5.1% nationally, but they're projecting that that's going to go up, I believe, to 7 to 8.5%. Where the state, I think, so for me, I look at this and go, if we have a 4.7% rate rise and say it even got to 8.5% or 8 or 7, we can say to our residents comfortably, we have had to make significant savings so that you are paying less in your rates and we're keeping them lower. I guess the service reviews and all that will come into it, but hopefully those pressures nationally decrease over time, because if they don't, it could be interesting, and we'll be in similar positions in future budgets in years to come. But I personally think with this budget, we can say to our community, if inflation too stays that it is now or goes up to 7 to 8.5%, we have got the right balance between rate rises and significant savings in this budget, I believe. And we've had to, without these savings, CEO, can I just ask, can't remember the exact figure, but I think we looked at both short-term and long-term savings in this budget. There's at least, was it 1.5 million? I saw through a whole lot of the savings that we've had a look at. Do you know what the actual figure is? So residents ask how much, because I know you mentioned it a couple of times, but we've had significant savings that I remember in any budget that I've been involved in.
CEO. So through you, Mayor Lachlan, the figure is in the order of $795,000 over 3 years, plus or minus $10,000 or $20,000. That includes roughly $660,000 next year.
Yes.
So, and that's from the audit committee's suggested target of $550,000.
Yes.
We've managed to achieve more than that. Plus, we've achieved an additional $140,000 in additional revenue as a part of the recent projection. So we're closing on $1 million in operating budget turnaround in a single year, which is pretty incredible.
Forever. Recurrent saving and turnaround.
Yeah, so that's $1 million forever. Yeah. So look, I can safely put my head on my heart knowing that we've gone through, we have looked at the budget, we've looked at opportunities to cut deeply where we can. We cut deeply as well. And I guess the question now goes back to, I guess, residents. If you want us to go further, what do you want to do without? Because, and when you look at the without, there's very little more that I think we can really cut in this budget before we really are causing major issues to the business. So I personally feel comfortable that we've got the right balance, that if it does go towards 8.5%, we're half that and we've made significant savings. And for me, I'm comfortable to support the budget as it is. It's not a budget we love, we get that. It's a budget in hard times that we are making tough decisions so residents don't face the full impacts of full rate rises to inflation. That's the reality of the situation, I think.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Nguyen.
Prospect Council relies heavily on revenue generated by property based base rates and charges to provide services and facilities to our local communities. We need to remember that unlike other bigger councils, Prospect Council does not have large commercial base or industries to cushion the residential rate increase. So for this reason, I feel that the rate setting process is not easy, more particularly this year, as it has been challenging to offset the needed increase of the rate to taxpayers of our city. I acknowledge that there is a portion of people in our community that will be okay with the amount that we've set and are financially not going to be so concerned about the rate increase. However, we cannot discount the residents in our community who are rich in assets but poor in cash, mainly our senior residents who are already struggling to keep up with the cost of living. But I also want to take this opportunity to encourage people to reach out to council if they are experiencing financial hardship, because we've got such policies in place, and if they reach out, maybe we can work something out with them. Council administration and elected members have spent a lot of time going through the budget lines to find savings and cost efficiencies, and where possible, we've had to reduce, cut and defer projects, programs and services. Over the last 3 years, I have never seen the budget being stripped down, scaled down to this degree. So it was hard. In my opinion, I think the level of engagement and communication with the various stakeholders on the budget process this year has been by far the best I've seen. So well done to the active director, Ginny, and all the staff involved in the preparation of the focus groups and the consultation. And I also want to thank the community members, the participants, for coming in, giving us their feedback and input. Unfortunately, the rate increase of 7.4% to the average residential property is steep at this point in time, but I feel it is needed to keep the wheels turning for this council. And I want to thank Corinne for coming in, because you've normalised all the butterflies in my stomach. You've made me feel that we're not the only one going through this, and that other councils are, feeling the same thing as well. So I support the motion.
Good speech. Any further speakers, councillor Barnett?
Yes, I just agree with the previous speakers, and it, as we could say, it hasn't been easy these last several months in our city. Apart from external change, as we've heard about what's been happening with all the inflation and the reasons why, but we've had a lot of internal change, but that's a path that we agreed as a council was a way that we wanted to get our council, track in certain areas, we're talking about the service reviews and things like that. So I think these times are always difficult, but we haven't blinked. We haven't panicked. I think, and because of all the information provided to us from our staff and our audit committee and other sources, and I think I find our residents generally are fairly wise, the majority of them, and although they, as we've found, a lot of them really do not understand all the machinations and all the different legislation that we have to abide by, and just how, for example, people don't realise $50,000 for a car park, well, that's most probably cheap at the moment compared with what it could be in the next few years. So I think in terms of what Corinne was talking about, that we have a financial long-term plan where about reviewing all our asset plans and making sure that our reporting is spot on. I think we've turned the tide a bit there, and thanks to Chris and the staff for that. And I think also my and council colleagues too, because without backing that in, I just feel personally would have been much worse off. If some of us, people want their certain projects to get up or not. So I think we've done that. So, yeah. So I think my concerns are about some of the things that the, particularly state governments, past, present, most probably future, are going to do to us in local government. Because we're still, as I say, a creature of state government, where still I hope they've stopped for a little while to say, oh, you have to be more accountable, more accountable, more accountable. Well, how accountable do you want us to be, honestly? We could turn that around and look at some of state and federal government decisions. For example, $140,000 huge increase there. What was it, 90,000? So I think previously 140,000. Again, council elections is great to have the democratic process, but that's under a state government law. It's not our law. It's not our. We've had this oyster on us, and it really, really makes me cross that it does not seem to get through. I know the local government association and the mayors and others that put pressure on. We just keep on being ground into ground, basically. So I think somewhere it needs to be really taken on that sort of process. Again, how many residents out there? I hope our mayor and our telling people about how our annual plan and budget came about. We'll home in on some of these things, that it's not all of our doing. We've done our jolly damnedest and cut really hard and deep without actually stripping away the whole fabric of what our residents really like about what we do. So I think healthy financial long-term plan, right? And we can stick to our guns in that. So I think all in all, we've done well, but we still don't know what's to come. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the item? Councillor Harris.
Did Alison have a question?
Just a quick question. It was a bit like we've had other state imposed costs. Is it possible to levy that as a separate line or? Okay.
Even on you that answer. Let's see.
But it's worth asking.
Guess who prescribes how we can invoice ratepayers?
So
You got it.
is that clever?
You can put a letter in that explaining.
You can put an attachment. Yeah. Councillor Harris.
Okay, I think last one. Look, I'm actually going to support it, 4.7. I was coming along not supporting, but thanks to yourself, you say to listen to other people and go. I think even though we'll do 4.7 and 95 bucks extra for first, in reality, the process might have been good. The work that the staff put in was very good. The work that my fellow councillors put in was good. I'd even say very good, but shortly. But reality, it's a whole piece of terrible stuff that we're stuck with, whether it's because of the rest of the world and other places and Russia and all these things, that we've had to sit here, we've destroyed our bearing with our staff, of some of the cutting down of the people that left, the people that are still here, some of the residents, and my only prime example, and there's 100 others, is I live in Balfour Street, Nailswood. I used to be able to walk down the street. 3 years ago, we passed a motion, nearly 3 years ago, of fixing the end of Howard Street and thing. And those people sort of look at me now, and some have even forgot that we voted to do it. That might be the better. So our reality is the way we've saved money, got it down to a 4.7. Well, originally from 3 going up, but by not going higher and staying at 4.7, the reality of how we've done it is to stop servicing our residents, ourselves, and the people that work here to do it. And I saw the street sweeper the other day. Stunned I was. It's down my street. I haven't seen it so many months. It's not that funny. And I'm right opposite the school. You see the service things that happen, and my council made up the end. He said he spoke to people that had perhaps a different view than some that I had spoken to, and that talk about we had great ideas, and not great just ideas. We had great things to put trees right through our street. We had great plans to get rid of the bitumen footpath and put down proper stone sort of footpath. We had great ideas to do various things. The Broadview, the current deputy mayor points out that we shifted the Broadview Oval fair from here and those sort of things. So we're supporting, and I emphasise I'm still going to support the fact that we've kicked a whole lot of people in the kneecaps and taken stuff away. And it's terrible that we've done it. And hopefully it improves. And from what I see next year at least, it's going to be much on that same line. You know, it's not going to be that much difference maybe coming that. So yes, we go where we are, but I'm not going to walk down the street and say we done a terrific vote the other night. I'm going to say we done a vote that we had to do something, but I'm dead worried now. I most probably won't be here, or don't want to use that word dead, that was back there. But I go past Broadview Oval, and we got a fantastic setup that's going to have, you know, a new club rooms, it's going to have a community thing, and it's going to have all that. And listening to one of our deputation, the cost of that might go through the roof before it's even started or before it's finished. And we might not even get that. And we haven't got a control on it. So I'm going to support it, but I think it's terrible. I don't know how many years I've been here, but it's a bit less than Christine, but it is up there. Maybe in a good way we've worked with it, but one of our worst bloody things, oh, sorry, one of our worst things that we've actually done, because all we've done is taken away from our residents, our staff and ourselves, but I am going to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. I think Councillor Pearce being an apology on the last one, able to speak, and I will, because it has been an extraordinary budget, and I think everyone's spoken really well about that. I do want to extend your thanks to the staff, particularly the CEO, for his leadership and staff's leadership. Chris Birch in particular, with Ginny working very hard, of course, but elsewhere, not through this last couple of months. It's been really hard work, and for all the elected members, this has been the toughest budget any of us have had to do. And it didn't get any easier when we brought it back after community consultation and the inflation rate came out, and then the incoming treasurer said, well, I think it's only going to get worse. And you always, you know, who listens to an incoming treasurer? And then the Reserve Bank governor said he's right. And you thought, oh, this is pretty grim. I think it's been the best ever we've done, because we've had the most transparent approach from the CEO and from staff. And I can't commend you enough, CEO, for opening up the books and allowing us to have discussions, allowing us to own the decisions around service levels. And Councillor Harris is exactly right. I haven't wanted to cut anything, but you've let us look at it and us make the decision around that. That's been a very different approach, and I think that's the correct approach. But it takes great leadership from your level to be able to allow us to do that. And then we have to own it. We have to own the reductions that have been made to service levels, and we're not going to be proud of it, but they're our decisions that we've made. I think it's also good to put on the video record, at least that we did listen to the community pretty hard and fast, and we always get a bit suspect that do its work and we never listen, but we did actually listen. I mean, we've made cuts to hard waste collections, first time in years we've done that, so it's down to 2. We deferred a storage shed at Broadview in response to trying to shift things in the capital budget. We made a cut to our Green Tunnel program, which I didn't like, but we have made a cut to it in response to some of the feedback that we could slow that down. We've made significant cuts to the economic development portfolio, but that was a discretionary spend. But in response to significant feedback, we have increased our budget in that area, and I think we'll get a pretty good service response out of that. So where those people should be pretty happy that their lobbying led to. Yeah, we put a fair chunk of it back. We deferred Peppermint Gums Reserve upgrade in response again to community feedback. We have funded the upgrade of the Oval toilets. We've heard again from the petitioner and a deputy tonight around how important that project is. And in response to other costs concerns from some ratepayers that you're always a bit fat, we have made the largest cuts ever to library services, to library opening hours, to record keeping, and to a number of other events, to a number of other discretionary areas that I've ever seen in this council. So I'm really proud of how we've worked incredibly hard at that, and how we've responded to community feedback. I'm not happy with the result, but I'm proud that we were able to tackle those and work through them and avoid an 8 or 9% rate increase, because that was really our only alternative. What it has led to, though, I think it's really important to understand this. We have managed to make all those cuts and respond to state government impositions, and I like the idea of a little information flyer that goes out with the rates notice, right? But we have also set aside a contingency, a very large contingency for the CEO, the largest contingency I've seen in this council for a number of years, to cover salaries, wages, and escalation in capital cost. We don't know if it'll be needed. Fairly certain we all know it probably will be needed, but we have never given a CEO that much discretion in a budget that's been so tight. And we've done it because we know it's necessary, but we don't exactly know where it will be necessary. And we trust our CEO to spend it wisely, because we know he will have to do that to keep the machinery moving here. And the people that we love and trust to do the work will need to be looked after. Because it's very stressful for them, don't forget, as well as our ratepayers. We also have in this budget funded great projects. I mean, the Broadview Community Hub is something that many of us, if not all of us, have been pushing for years. We've not had a strong presence in the east. It's always been up to the sporting clubs. We've made Broadview Oval Precinct a lot better than it was, but really this place needs a heart, and we are going to fund it in this budget. And it's caused some pain, but we are going to fund it. This budget funds it, and I'm really, really proud of it. We're also funding the Percy Street Park upgrade. It was my local park when I first moved to Prospect. It's always been pretty lame, and now we're going to make it a nice little park, not bigger, just a nice little park for the people in that precinct. That is their only park other than trying to get in on the school grounds. That's Prospect North. We're also funding one of the largest stormwater capacity increases in the city's history since the Prospect Road drain was upgraded many, many years ago. I think it's Councillor Harris and Christina will remember the pain that caused when it was done. So this project we're funding is $4.5 million, and it's one step in a number of steps that we have to do. So those are really significant things that this budget will fund. And finally, this discipline we put in this budget provides a pathway out of years of deficits. It helps us get back on the straight and narrow. It helps get next year's budget close to balanced, if not a small deficit. And that means we've got capacity to try and solve that car parking dilemma, which we all love to wave a magic wand over. We know it'll be a magic money wand. And we know that good times will return. And this council, the next council, will be very well placed financially to deal with it because of what this council has done throughout this process. And I don't think that can be overstated. It's been a really important process, this one, to cut our cloth to suit the times. So I agree with Councillor Harris. There's not much in here about the cuts that I like, but I just get a sense that this has been incredibly good, hard work to put us in a place where we can move forward with confidence, rather than, tricking ourselves into thinking this is a budget of convenience and one we can get through the next election with, but really sets us up to fail in the future. So I commend it to you. I'm really happy that people have a chance to participate and speak to it tonight, and I commend the motion to you. And back to you, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to sum up.
Well, I was going to say there's not much more to be said, and I still will say that. However, one point about cuts, I think we're all for reviewing service levels, but in any business, the people who work in the business need the tools and the people to do a decent minimum job. What we'll find if we continue to hack away beyond what's reasonable is that people will become dissatisfied with their roles because they won't have the tools, they won't have the people around them to do the job that they know that they can do. That will result in people leaving our organisation, which we do not want to happen. So I'm comfortable with what we've retained with regards to staffing and service levels at the moment. And if we need to review to create efficiencies, that's great. But, you know, continually hacking away to save money will have a completely detrimental effect. So I'm glad that we've stopped where we've stopped. And as Councillor De Backer said right at the very start, about 4.5 hours ago, we don't love this budget, but we have to live with our owners. So it's our job, if we're campaigning for the next election, it's our job to go out and in the next 6 months, until that point in time, it's our job to go and out amongst the community and back ourselves for what we've decided upon here. So I'm sure we'll all do that. Very well.
Full stop.
Full stop.
That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously, which is extraordinary, given what it was. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, team. Yeah, shoulders can all just relax a bit now.
One thing that wasn't said was the mayor and that is budget also funds $700,000 in addition. So if it wasn't for that renewal spend, you could almost be in surplus already. And you funded your way out of that. It's true. Well, it's one to say and putting aside.
Yeah,
Yeah. 10.2 members, discretionary, not in the rate bag yet, discretionary rate rebates, 2022-23, the recommendations of page 104. Somebody happy to move it in its current form?
I'd love to.
Councillor Bruce, thought you might, Bruce will speak to it.
No, no, I'm kidding. I do. No, full stop yet. Look, this comes before us every budget season. And thank you for that. I just wanted to ask two questions. One is the report refers to the mandatory rate rebates. And apologies if it's here and I haven't been able to see it. Can you could somebody ask the question, how many mandatory rate rebates have we provided this year?
CEO?
Mr. Birch. It's a different question than I normally ask. So.
Mandatory rebates.
How many we provide each year? The answer is 148. And so my understanding of the mandatory rebate process is that's to organisations that either are not required to pay rates, such as community housing organisations. Can I just check if that's correct?
Churches, schools and the like.
Through there, there's a couple of different levels depending on which section you can find them.
Yeah.
Most are either 100% or 75% rebate.
Yeah.
So some organisations do still pay 25%.
Yeah. Okay. Which brings us to the three that I think we normally give these three a mandatory, discretionary rate rebate. Just for completeness, there's no others that we have thought that we should be offering up. I know the report says it's not, but as is my custom for 12 years, I thought I should ask again, are there any other organisations that we think we should be providing that discretionary rebate to?
Through there, we keep an eye out as change of ownerships happen. Obviously, we don't necessarily see a change of occupancy, but a change of ownership, my staff will go through aware of organisations that may fit the criteria and they're forwarded a form and a letter inviting them to apply. But there is applications are open with the budget being adopted tonight. It restarts that process for the new financial year.
Yeah.
Any member of the community who feels they may be entitled to either a mandatory or a discretionary forms on our website and have until the first installment date to apply, and any applications we receive will go to the certificate.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
I look forward to seeing my application.
Yeah.
No?
No.
No, okay. No, that's all. Thank you.
Seconder, do I have one? Deputy Mayor, just to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Any further debate? Councillor De
I
Backer.
just do have a question unless it's outlined in the details with discretionary rebate. So for example, to say if you had a school that owned additional property for future purposes of car parks or whatever, are those properties also excluded from rates, or do the properties have to be used for the purpose for which they are, like the organisation is establishing, you know what I mean, and being a school, for example.
Through the mayor, it is on the purpose. So just because it's owned a classic example is a church. The church, for religious purposes, is entitled to a rebate, but the manse where the pastor may live is not.
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further debate? Questions? If not, councillor Gooch, you should sum up your excellent speech.
Oh, I'd love to, but I won't. No, thank you.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is discretionary rate rebate Village Heart marketing funds, similar vein, recommendations on page 106. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's fair enough to say that we listen to the issues that are associated with this, and so we have acted accordingly.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Tobacco, wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Any further debate? Speaking for me, there's a lot more room to grow in this. I appreciate that they thought long and hard about asking us to increase this. They approached me to see what the process was to increase it. I outlined, a process which is on their side informal, but for us, it would give confidence to us moving it as an increase. They didn't follow through with that, so clearly they're not ready to do it, but they understand they have capacity to increase it. Times are a bit interesting at the moment, so that would have been factored in. But I think this is something we should keep an eye on, and I'm really delighted that one of the perverse outcomes of us withdrawing our support for this area is that they now drive this in entirety on their own, and I'll be really interested to see what they want to do with this fund in time that's entirely driven by themselves. Every other mob that's got hold of this around the state has a contribution higher than this and use it, I think, really well. So this is a good little fund. Thank you. Any further debate? Not. Councillor Barnett, just sum up.
No.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. 10.4 fees and charges 22-23 recommendations on page 108. Somebody wish to move it in its current form? Deputy Mayor, just speak to it.
I'd love to move it to get it on the floor because I feel like my fellow elected members might have a little bit of commentary to add.
Okay, thank you. So did you wish to speak to the motion at all, or that's it?
I'll reserve my section 42. I'll reserve my right to speak afterwards.
Section 225 in a second. I'll actually give someone. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group, wish to speak to it?
Just reiterate the comments of the deputy mayor.
Okay, right. In anticipation of something else happening, Councillor Tobacco.
I'd like to move an amendment, please.
Okay, I believe you provided your amendment to staff, if they could show that to us, which is an insertion here shown as part 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I will. Look, in reading through the fees and charges, and this is how it goes out to the public, they see a list of fees, and I see it as a list of barriers. One of the biggest, I guess, drains on our budget is we're paying for this building, and it's a great asset to our community. However, we have stipulated in our community facility hire policy, which wasn't included or referenced in this particular motion, that we are wanting to promote activities that align with the community plan and optimise usage of paint fee. I don't want to see that as a barrier, and I congratulate the CEO in proactively recruiting people that are focused on community and focused on community facilitation. I want to be really clear in this motion that we're giving the discretion to the incoming director of city strategy, community and culture, that they can look at the fees and charges and say, how can we do some one-off things? How can we do some trial things? How can we say, well, look, if we facilitate this mini conference, this is actually going to facilitate one of our plans, and guess what? It's not going to cost us anything. So I just wanted to highlight it in the motion and make sure that fees and charges, at an operational level, but I'm also going to foreshadow a motion to July's meeting in collaboration with CEO to give a tool that it's advertised that people can apply to say, well, we're going to tick a box here. How can you help us do this one-off event or whatever it is? So I'd encourage you to look at this amendment and incorporate that in the motion, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll do what I normally do, which is to test whether the mover is happy to incorporate. Yes, Deputy Mayor, that's you.
It's yes or no, isn't it?
You see these eyebrows?
Yeah, yes, well,
Thank
yes,
you.
I'm happy to.
Okay, seconded.
Is it yes
Councillor Groot.
Yes.
Thank you. There's two yeses. Now seek leave from the meeting to incorporate the change. All those in favour? Against, it's unanimously incorporated. Thank you, Councillor Zabaka. Would you speak any further to it?
No, thank you.
Any further debate on this item? You've got the right to sum up.
Just reminding you of that.
Thank you, because I was
It's not a while ago.
I was about to forget that, yeah. Any further debate, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I'm just wondering how the most recent incorporation of councillor Backer, well, I approved on, I went along with it. But operationally, I just wonder how would that work? Would a report come back to us about the reason why things being changed?
Well, my understanding is this is actually current practice. It's just making it explicit. CEO, am I correct?
Yes, through you, Mayor Lachlan, that's correct. So these are either changes that staff can make under delegation in response to a request or an inquiry from a community group or potential user, or alternatively, we invite users who have events or uses of our facility that are consistent with our community plan and give them proactive notice of the availability of these discretionary opportunities for lower cost.
Yeah, that's right. I just want to make sure that it's a fair and open process, so perhaps some groups aren't more looked upon more favourably than others who may not be aware of this. That's all.
I think the intention is
Yeah.
that be promoted now that it's in the resolution. That's the intention of them. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
Any further debate on this item? Councillor Nguyen.
I think the amendment gives flexibility and gives the incoming director opportunities to be creative and look at our spaces to provide opportunities to our community members. And I think, at times, cost is a factor and that eliminates that factor. So I support the amendment.
Thank you. Further debate? Deputy Mayor, would you now wish to sum up?
Thank you, Councillor Backer, for the amendment. I think it makes sense to reinforce that point and set expectations for the incoming director of city strategy and community culture that it's in their hands. And we would like to see a lot more creative thinking, I think, with regards to what happens here, not just passive look and taking. So I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Thanks, folks. That concludes all of the items regarding the budget. I'm just wondering if people appreciate a short adjournment. I certainly would. I'm going to grab something from the fridge. So should take a 2
What have
minute.
you got in the fridge?
Yeah, well, hopefully there's a cold drink still there. We'll take a 2 or 3 minute adjournment, if that's okay, folks.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
They haven't started swearing and doing all those kind of things.
What's the time that this person reading it?
coffee.
This is what happens when no one says anything break and then all of a sudden. Everybody's left the table.
9:27.
Yeah. I think going from dinner straight into this is like almost 2.5 hours.
And hopefully. And there's another one.
And again. And then again. Okay, well, I'm here. Did you want me? Oh, have a look. You've made the right judgment call, Dave.
So what's the Twitter feed saying about all the other councils? Interesting.
They'll all be in a similar boat, but some of them will be a percent below us and try and win
It
it.
depends how many capital projects they've got. That's the thing, if they're loaded up with capital projects.
Well, some of them will have reserves. They'll start eating into their reserves rather than put the rates up.
Yeah.
But equally, the big councils have locked into a EBA with CPI as the upper limit. So they have to now do a 5.1% increase this year. And they don't have it in their budget. Well, let's put it this way,
Well,
they
it's
didn't have
gonna
it,
be low forever.
didn't have it in their draft budget. Right, so now they have to come back, staff have to revise them, what the risk is, and they'll have to. You know, it's $1.5 billion for some of the companies. Now, Councillor Barnett, I'm going to take my badge off to encourage you to do the same. It's just shot in my eyes.
Were you doing that deliberately,
There's-
Dana?
That's right.
What, how?
Somewhere there's,
These are being.
somewhere there's a line that's going.
I've got a hypnotise.
Yeah, so hopefully it's good. You're going to stop being cooking for.
Who actually chose these?
Oh, I know, what an idiot chose them. Yeah. You know why we all got new badges?
My letters are wearing off.
I know.
Huh?
I need a little tape.
Oh,
And it's so hard to read.
They are. yeah, hard to read. Well, we can do them again next term because
You have
We're
to
just
pay
doing your
for your own-
lanyards.
You've got to pay for your own badge now.
Make your own reading for time. That'd be cool.
Yeah, free printer out.
Yeah.
we might be able to.
We can do a free
On-
printer.
Well, we can do a plastic one up the staff. It's just they don't stand out. Make it staff.
Bad experience
And we've got to pay for this shape. So we could get them to do a satin finish on it.
Yeah.
And it's the matter of getting the lettering to show up on a satin finish, but they might be able to.
So that
They
plus. over the
Look
cover
at it.
and those-
Yeah.
Use that same white lettering to the name.
I'm all right.
Could do.
Getting through it, but yeah, it'll be.
Could do.
Otherwise, when you started on Monday, I just can't wait. But you could.
Folks, if we could resume some stage Tuesday night would be good. Yeah, quorum in the kitchen's looking good.
There's not enough room for the forum.
Well, that was deliberate. Yeah, I can because you're in proximity. Yeah.
We can quickly pass a whole lot of.
I'm gonna call it. So now we're up to 10.5 for Indy Kamunka quarterly update, recommendations on page 133. And I feel compelled to suspend meeting procedures to allow for nominations. So, because in item 3, we need to have a nomination. So
So do we move it first or?
well, we can't move item 3 because there's unless we've got councillor ... and we're on board, we don't, we need a name. So I need a nomination. So I just seek leave to suspend meeting procedures until 8:50 should be needed. All those in favour? Against, thus suspended. I got the majority anyway, councillor
You've got
Harris.
the majority.
Now, are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate straight away. Christine.
Councillor Barnett, do you accept the nomination, councillor Barnett?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you, any further nominations? Well, that makes it easy. Councillor Barnett, we'll go back into formal proceedings. Somebody happy to move that way with councillor Barnett in item 3. Councillor Harris, would you speak to it?
Yeah, look, a couple of things in case people didn't pick up. The it's fairly well, couple of pages filled out, and at the moment with the mayor attending these meetings and Christina coming the last one, well, I shouldn't say that, councillor Barnett coming the last one. And I also wanted to point out that point 2, the sending of the motion is where we decided that we'd only have the 2 of us. And this now opens us up to what we got named in point 3, to have the 3 of us there. And that came about with a discussion, particularly with the Ghana people that were there at the last meeting, and they felt, in fact, they felt quite surprised that there were sort of 2 of us in what role. Because Dave said, well, I'm the mayor. Oh, well, that misses out. So it got a bit confusing, but after about an hour and a half, we did sort it out. And we've gone down this sort of process. But it's very little we can say, and later on I'm going to do in the other bit to add some things, but I think it's working. All this is happening. I unfortunately see it slow, or most probably won't see it out, but it's a slow process. But when I give my report later on about where I went today, I think we'll see how it's such an important process, and to have it right, and how it fits in to our community. So I just want to move 1, 2, 3, and hopefully people vote for it.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Is it
Better if someone else did it, but it's not as if it's loaded with a big fee. So somebody else have a second. Councillor Tobacco, wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, just to commend that the efforts are now going. And I think it's a constructive conversation and journey for all of us, and will continue to be. So I think to have representation from the council, but also our community and our appropriate roles in those discussions. And I guess, the good thing is that you 3 will all be doing a lot of listening and bringing that back to us and the community. So thank you very much. And for those who have already participated, and for Christina for nominating, and who's already participated already.
Thank you. Any further debate?
Just to
Councillor
quickly echo those words and thank the Mayor, Councillor Harris and Christina Barnett for the extra work you're doing and what you're going to bring back to the council. Thank you.
Pleasure. Just briefly from me, we talk a lot about gender balance here, and we don't have it at the moment with our elected members. But the Ghana speak about it and do it, and they have worked really hard to have 3 women and 3 men around the table, and they've said that right from the start, that's been important to them. The previous chair, Jeffrey Newchurch, said it, and the new chair, Les Wegener, has said it. So it's just one of their core values, and even to the point of it trying to attach young people to the process. They want to have, a boy and a girl, or a young man and a young woman attached to the process somehow. And, I think it's great that we've got a woman as one of our representatives, even though it's 1 out of 3. They expect that from us. They hear us say it, but it is embarrassing sitting at a table and they've done it and we haven't yet done it. And I just think that today, this means that we're going to step up to that plate, and hopefully we can. Not to the detriment of great people on the table, but obviously, we need to do it in an election cycle as well in City of Prospect. So that's a different topic for another day, but I commend this motion to you, and again, thank my co-participants in that forum. It's slow work, and look, whilst I'm frustrated about that, I'm not embarrassed about it because there's no rule book. Like, we are writing the script as we go along, and that's necessarily needs to be respectful and consider a whole pile of things. And it's a challenging pathway for everybody involved. But I'm pretty sure that we've got a launch pad firmly established now. And I no longer feel that, you know, we're miles in front of kayak. I think it wasn't quite toe to toe on the day, but they've thought a lot about this process, and their contributions are equal to ours in terms of how we move this forward. And the pace at which we do so has to be respectful of lots and lots of things, complexities that we can't imagine, that we trust them to deal with on their side of the ledger, and they're doing that. So I hope great things will continue to come out of it. Thank you. Any further debate?
I could
Councillor Bartley?
just add that, I think it's very worth noting that we have two co-chairpersons and that they will be alternating and working it out between the co-chair people. So I think that's something that should be noted. And it's very much a learning process for all of us. So it's yeah, it's just I think at the end of the day, you know, we sort of work around things, come back, work around and reach an agreement. And yeah, I'd just like to thank Brendan also for the work, and I think the respect that is held there. Yes, so looking forward to the, what comes to us from this.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Harris, wish to sum up?
No, thank you very much. And just when we get to the council business, I can relate back to a little bit of this.
Indeed. Okay, that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 10.6 Cities Power Partnership pay recommendations on page 151. Somebody happy to move that in its current form?
Yes, I'll move that way.
Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I think it's an important process. And as it says, to access free membership and resources to allow us as a council to carry our own environment plan and tackle climate change. So I commend the motion to council.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, wish to speak to it?
Briefly, so the thing I like about taking this approach is that we're tapping directly into a collective pool of expertise and experience, and we can not have to reinvent the wheel here. We can be part of a group who's focusing on this, pick up the best of what other people are doing and fast track some of the outcomes we're looking for, which I think is a really good and effective use of our time and money. I hope now that we've gone down this path, we'll make the most of it and really leverage the opportunity.
Thank you. And further speakers? Councillor DeBacker.
Look, I've probably got a few more questions around it, a bit like our intelligent communities. If you actually go to table 2 and look at the pledges for city, some of the actions and resourcing are a bit wishy-washy. You know, energy efficiency with the rolling out LED lighting, investigate the rollout of LED lighting across, I mean, anyone can investigate, desktop search, and then it says resourcing, council has previously done some work in this space. It really tells us nothing about what we're doing. And I'd like to see this kind of approach be embedded in best practice. I mean, I don't know about you, but my electricity rates are just about to go up, my person. So if we're not doing this internally and with our community, especially the community groups who, you know, use our spaces, I think we're missing the mark. So hopefully this has some checks to see that we're actually getting value out of it and we're actually saving our ratepayers some money. Be great.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Ripp.
I won't repeat word for word, but I had similar sort of thoughts. But my one I wanted just to ask a bit more about from the staff, where it talks about it crosses over on page 153 to 154, The bottom of 153 says sustainable transport. Each council's fleet purchases meet strict greenhouse gas emissions requirements and supports the uptake of electric vehicles. Our response to the action description says update to council's fleet and policies in the first instance, with future acquisitions being required to comply. And it says it's considered this way materially alter the budget requirements. Can I just get a check? So are our current fleet all electric vehicles? And if not, what's the cost of, say, a regular sort of petrol car versus the cost at the moment of an electric vehicle? Because my understanding is that the initial cost difference is actually quite high at the moment. So I would actually argue would materially impact the budget.
See ya.
So through you, Mayor Lachlan, most of our fleet vehicles, or at least our pool fleet vehicles for use in this building, are hybrid vehicles already. The vehicles that we use that are not hybrids right now are either, like, I won't say unavailable, but they're not necessarily practical. So, for example, we have some vans, and the use of those vans right now, there are questions, certainly in terms of whether or not we could purchase replacement vehicles with electric technology that meet our basic requirements. Equally with our trucks, which is probably the primary area of greenhouse emissions, which we need to look at in future years. And whilst there is definitely technology, and we've seen some marketing material this past week at the national conference that offers potential opportunities there for electric purchasing in the future. The question will be, and you're right, whether or not that stacks up from a budget standpoint once it becomes viable. Right now, those vehicles would not work for us. So in the next 3 years, you're not going to see a huge impact on the budget because there's probably not much more we could do better with our existing fleet. We could consider 100% electric vehicles for our pool vehicles, and that would require some investment in electrical charging infrastructure within the building and a few other things that we would need to budget for. But in order to meet the essential requirements as we see them right now for partnership, we are close enough now that for the next 3 years we're probably okay. That's the advice provided to me by staff.
Sure. I just think too, I'd almost like to move an amendment, but I don't want to force CEO's hand on at this stage in terms of wording. But to me, this reads like, oh yeah, the way this reads to me is we upgrade our electric vehicles to, or fleet of electric vehicles that won't materially impact the budget. I would counter that and say right now, it's not financially viable. So, but I read this, the way it reads this is yes, if we, so maybe it's the way I've also interpreted it. And if we are on hybrid, that's great. But if we have to move our fleet tomorrow to fully electric vehicles, it does not financially stack up and it's not financially viable. So I think we need to state that here and be honest with the community and say it doesn't financially stack up at the moment if it doesn't. Because otherwise, this to me were that it is currently not financially viable to have 100% of our fleet as electric vehicles. Would you, right, how would you like to, I guess, amend the wording in this? Because I don't think this is reflective at the moment of the true rural impact. Or would you like us to craft something on the fly? Or would you like us, do you want to have a few minutes to think about it? Also the mayor, how would you like that process to work?
Well, sorry, it's addressing your question to me, what we're concerned about here is not our budget in this item. We're not concerned about what we do about climate change response. What we're concerned about in this item is purely whether we've got 5 criteria that meet the eligibility requirement to be a member of the City Power Partnership. So they provide a whole pile of options. Of those, they say pick any 5, but you must commit to 5. These are the 5 recommended to us by staff with the comments that are noted. So I just can't stress that enough.
Okay.
This is about eligibility to be in a program. It's not making a budget decision right now. CEO, if the words were to, if you thought they would need to be further improved, The question was, what would they be?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Lachlan. Again, I would go back to, I think the mayor's pretty much nailed it. The column 2 is about the action that you're being asked to endorse as a response to the commitment. So action 2 says that we need to look at our fleet policies and then drive future acquisitions to comply with those policies. The column 3 talks about resourcing not being an immediate commitment through the report. And if you're uncomfortable with the statement made by staff in that comment, you might want to qualify, for example, the resolution in adopting it. So you may still decide as a council that joining the Cities Power Partnership is a good idea and that these 5 recommended pledges are a good idea. However, noting that council are concerned that potentially the resourcing impacts are understated in the report, or words that effect.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to move that way. I'm happy to move an amendment that states, or basically move point 1 and also point 2. And I'll move an amendment or move a point 3 of an amendment that future budget impacts to meet something. I'll work with me. That's right. The future budget impacts will need to be considered in order to fully capitalise on all 5
Pledges.
on all 5 pledges, particularly the sustainable transport. Oh, yeah, sorry, catcher. Future budget impacts will need to be considered in order to fully capitalise on all 5 pledges, particularly sustainable transport and electric vehicles. Sustainable transport, particularly sustainable transport and the move of our fleet towards electric vehicles. I'm happy with that. And sustainable transport and the move of our fleet, sustainable transport and the move of our fleet towards electric vehicles. So electric vehicles will be in the end. That will just need to be, yeah. So I need to do some knowledge for the capitalised all five points, the capital sustainable.
Yeah, I think it's generic enough to have as a part 3. It doesn't require an amendment to the table that can sit CEO, it just as its own kind of outside of that process. So
Yes, so through you, Mayor Lachlan, my gut feel there is that what you're asking me to do is to consider future operating projects to fund additional resourcing towards these pledges and to put those on the table in future budget.
future
processes.
budgets, yeah, that's it.
That's my response as CEO.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, otherwise it's just wishy-washiness without real commitment.
Okay, so Councillor Rips moved an amendment. Councillor, are you okay if I take a brief question from Councillor Tobacco during
Sure.
your process? Councillor Tobacco.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is it possible to take the motion in parts? And is it possible to leave the second part on the table to come back to us at another meeting as a possibility?
That is a good question that is not needed at this point because we've got an amendment live before us at the
Okay,
moment.
all right.
In essence, you're going
Take
to
that question for another time.
well, you can ask to take it in parts, so we can move a formal motion, but we haven't actually got this as part of the formal motion
Okay.
yet, so we can't move delayed anywhere. But if you want to, when we get this moving, I'm happy to take it in parts, but we've got to get it on the floor or incorporate it first. So just ask the mover, Councillor Bunny, are you happy to incorporate that new part 3?
No.
No, therefore it becomes an amendment with the mover as Councillor Ripp. Are you still happy to move it as an
Yes.
amendment? You should speak any further to it.
I think I've said enough. Well, enough overall, but really the impact of this is these 5 pledges. We look at it, okay, we think they're 5 good pledges to pick. At the end of the day, so far a lot of these statements, for me, are relatively wishy-washy. I'm just simply stating here that we really need to look at future budget impacts in the future on how we're going to capitalise on all 5 pledges. Otherwise, they're just a wishy-washy pledge, really. Because the move towards electric vehicles is a material impact on the budget. It's not cheap at this point. Obviously, it'd be great federally when electric vehicles will nationally become cheaper, more people take it up. But at this stage, if we look at all our fleets and tomorrow we're going to split this over to all electric, financially it wouldn't be viable. So I personally think that we would need to consider future budget impacts in future years to have any meaningful impact of achieving this, otherwise these five pledges, otherwise it won't happen.
Okay, so we have a mover and amendment. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Right, Councillor Barnett. Councillor Barnett. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? I've asked twice, and there not being one. The amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Harris, will I speak to it?
But I'll second it. Because I don't want to let me mate down up the other end.
Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
He comes up with good ideas. Thank you.
Best speech ever. Any further speakers to the amendment, for or against? Councillor Nguyen.
I understand where councillor Rip is coming from, and I refer back to the LED lighting across all our street lights. We've had 2 workshops on this, and it hasn't progressed, it hasn't moved anywhere, because why? There's no budget, and given that we've just, adopted the budget, we're in financial hardship. You don't set aside money for these 5 pledges which require resources, there's no point. So I support the amendment, and I understand where Councillor Rip is coming from.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Backer.
Look, I love the intent, but I won't be supporting the motion because similar to Councillor Nguyen said, I think we actually need a better report to come back to us because we're going to tie the next council to this pledge. So I'd really like to see the low-hanging fruit. What can we do actually that costs no money? What can we do that's long-term that has a budget line allocated to it? I think a more informed report I'd be happy to endorse, but that's why I'm looking to endorse it in part. So I won't be supporting the amendment. Will be encouraged to support the initial 2 in parts.
Thank you. Further speakers to the amendment? Sure.
So the amendment, is it to add to 1 and 2,
Yes. A new part 3.
a new part 3?
If the amendment gets lost, there won't be a part 3. If the amendment is supported, there will be a part 3.
Could I ask a question?
Councillor Barnett, yes.
My
Of course.
question is, surely we would be considering future budget impacts. This is sort of a bit superfluous statement.
Is that a statement or a question?
My question is, I've asked, surely we would be considering future budget impacts.
It's still a statement. Turn it into a question by putting a question mark at the end of it, CEO.
So members, I'll take the question as follows, because it'll be easier for me to answer that way. How, as a CEO, would I interpret the motion as moved? And then how would my actions change if the amendment were passed? Maybe that's an easier way to manage it. If the motion is passed without a point 3, I will follow the actions in the table 2. So renewable energy. Install renewable energy as council building assets are renewed or upgraded. What you will see there, members, is a change to the budgets for renewal of buildings that will add a budget for solar power. And when I'm bringing those lists of renewal projects, buildings, they will include solar power as an addition. That's how that will change. Energy efficiency for point 2, undertake an audit of council buildings to implement recommendations where appropriate. I'll be looking to add an operating project to next year's budget to perform that audit in order to give effect to point 2, and so on and so forth. Members, I'll be following the actions there. I'll be looking to resource those either from the renewal budget or add to the renewal budget where appropriate, or add additional operating or capital projects to meet those challenges in the future. And obviously, members, those budgets will, as they are every year, be subject to review by this chamber. So my intent will be to add those actions into the way we do business. If point 3 is passed and included, there will be a separate special operating project, which I'll be putting to you next year. In addition to points 1 through 5, I'll do the same thing, but I'll add an additional operating project to try and allow for additional resourcing that might not be captured. For example, well, to be honest, the only thing that would change there is really around probably LED lighting and sustainable transport. Those items, honestly, sustainable transport, Councillor Rip's right, we're not going to do anything with that for the next couple of years. Firstly, because hybrid vehicles are probably the best we can manage right now without significant capital investment in this building's charging infrastructure, number 1. Number 2, Our remaining fleet assets, as far as I can tell right now, there's not a suitable option available for an electric upgrade, certainly in most of their cases. Our community transport vans and our trucks certainly is the things where we're generating the most greenhouse gas emissions. So they're going to have to wait. The fleet policy will identify future opportunities there as costs come down and as the opportunity with those new fleet assets improves in terms of their efficiency and their capability to meet the needs of our operation staff. So the difference will be more resourcing in terms of operating projects to support potential uses in the nearer term for things like LED lighting and sustainable transport. That's what 3 will add. But members, again, those actions will need to be funded. And right now they're not, but what it does do is say, if you want to install renewable energy as council building assets are renewed, that's going to impact our renewable budgets, period. So that'll.
And if you replace electric vehicles, it's going to be
100%. 100%.
Okay, so to answer your question, councillor
And
Barnett is the floor.
a follow-up question is, well, then why in our community plan towards 2040, which we've already passed, connected to caring, CC 1.4 prepare scope and budget for citywide transport and movement plan and develop a citywide plan and complete land upgrades, blah, blah. Analyze the green, for 2 to 5 year, analyze green credentials of council buildings, develop plans and funding strategy to improve environmental status, support transport innovation for an eye to a sustainable future. It's all there in our community plan, which council and staff will have to prepare a budget and everything. So I just think it's really, a nothing state.
You have a chance. No, you won't have a
Sorry,
chance.
that's-
Is there any further debate on the amendment? Thank you, councillor Barnett.
No.
Just from my perspective as chair on the amendment, it adds some value, but I agree with councillor Barnett, it doesn't change the fundamentals. If we want to comply with the pledges, there'll be a budget implication, pretty simple. But it does no harm. It just makes it explicit. If you think you're going to deliver on this stuff, you must consider additional budget. So fortunately, unless one of you runs out of the room, I don't have to have a vote in this because there's 7 out there, not 8. But I'll just put that to you. The issue here is, do we have 5 pledges that we can commit to, that they can consider that we've committed to make us eligible to be part of the program? Once we're part of the program, there's an enormous amount of assets in terms of helping us achieve these objectives, and those 5 pledges and beyond that, they're pretty well organised mob here. I think there's now 160 members. It's one of the largest kind of cross-council initiatives in the country. So the first thing is, it's about membership. Second thing is, we're serious, it'll need money, yes. Probably the other thing I would state is that the staff have shown us that we can be overly ambitious. There are 4 really easy to tick pledges in the options that they've given us. And our staff haven't recommended that all of those 4 be taken up. They've given us some more serious stuff that clearly implies we need to spend some money. The one around the vehicles is worded, it's on page, hang on, if you want to look it up, of the agenda papers, page 170. And it says, ensure fleet purchases meet strict greenhouse gas emissions requirements and support the uptake of electric vehicles. Okay, so that's what it says. What it doesn't say is commit to 100% electric vehicle uptake. It doesn't say that. You don't have to pledge that, right? What it says is set strict standards. So even if you're purchasing a truck and it's diesel because there's no alternative, that you have a standard that says we can't select that diesel truck because that's too dirty. Therefore, we've only got these 2 or 3 options left because they fit our strict standard. That's the pledge that they're saying we can choose from. The staff have gone a little bit tighter than that, and they've given us an implication on part 3 simply as an amendment says that just makes that more explicit. So if we wanted to, do this differently and choose the 4 easy ones and pick one hard one, we'd have a different looking table. I'm not recommending we do that, but I'm just recommending we keep perspective around what this item's actually about.
LED lighting rooms are behind where we want to be.
Well, can argue all those things in another place, probably at budget time, but that's where I see it. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Deputy Mayor Larwood.
I won't be voting in favour of the amendment. This is a catalyst to reinforce what we want to do. And so from that perspective, I think whilst the wording could have been a little bit more succinct, I think it achieves that purpose. I don't think the additional amendment adds a lot of value to it.
Okay, thank you. Any further on the amendment? There is no summing up on the amendment. I now put that. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? Amendment is lost. But a helpful discussion for the staff to observe. We're now back to the motion, and we've heard from not everybody. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor De Backer has spoken to the motion.
To
I've
the
got
amendment.
no to the motion.
You don't, I'll have it.
Yeah.
Isn't it a question? I can't remember. I so long ago. Sorry.
It's not even late.
Oh,
If there are no more speakers to the motion, councillor Barnett, just would you sum up?
No, I think enough's been said and been explained.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
well, I did ask.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Happy to do that
Point of
again.
order.
Take it,
Yeah,
I'll take it
thank
in
you.
advance.
Support.
Thanks for the reminder, councillor Green. I'll do that vote again. All those in favour of part one? Against? Part one is carried unanimously. All those in favour of part two? Against? Part two? Part two is carried. Okay, over the page, on my page anyway, item 10.7, Strategic Planning Development Policies Committee revised terms of reference recommendations on page 172. Somebody happy to move it? Good.
Councillor Baker had proposed change. Not sure she.
We'll take that as an amendment. Just get it on the floor first because it hasn't been distributed by staff or recommended by staff. So we'll treat that as an amendment, councillor Backer.
Yep.
When you get to it, so have someone happy to get it on the floor as it's presented in the agenda papers. Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it.
No, I think it, again, this is a, it's one of those interesting, sort of, committees that we have. So I'll just leave it at that time and hear the discussion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Group, wish to speak to it.
I'm going to do a Harris and second it, but I may not support it. I've just been reflecting a bit on this committee and looking at the terms of reference in particular. The terms of reference remain of, I think, four elected members plus the mayor, or sorry, let me just double check that in the terms of reference. Yes, sorry, 4 elected members and the mayor. That feels like a majority of our council. I'm just wondering about the usefulness of having a committee when I presume it's not a decision-making committee. I'll ask that maybe as a question. Is the committee charged with making decisions, or would they have to, anything they do have to come back to council?
All section 41 committees make recommendations to council. Council is the only decision-making body.
Yeah, I knew that. So my point being, is this committee with no external assistance is really just a subcommittee of us. And this has to come back to us anyway. And in fact, there's a majority of council members on this committee. If you look at it from a quorum perspective, that's 5. So I'm seconding it to, make sure it goes through its due process. But I was just reflecting on the usefulness of this committee in the sort of, short to medium term as to what it's going to achieve when a lot of this, in fact, all of this will come back to council for consideration. So just more of a commentary. Happy to get on the table and look forward to amendments or other commentary on it.
Thank you. Further speakers?
Right, yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
councillor
no,
Backer.
I didn't know where I was at. Now I've lost my place. Yeah, so basically, I just wanted to address the language in the terms of reference, and it's really just a minor thing. I'm just trying to be politically correct, but to replace the words male and female without knowing the makeup of the next council. The committee's membership will regard gender diversity as a core consideration. Because, if we have to have all women, which we'll probably have in our next council, I would suspect that that would be null and void. So I think just considering gender diversity is probably better language. But that's, that was a suggestion and I would welcome others' input or thoughts.
So easy when you move it as an amendment. CEO, how would you interpret that? If it's moved by the elected members, is that something you can put into a policy and you know what to do with?
Through you, Mayor Lachlan, yes, more than comfortable with the wording. In fact, I think we assisted Councillor Backer in pulling that together. And in fact, to be fair, it's probably a good amendment because it would also address non-binary persons of non-binary gender. So from that standpoint, I'd be more than comfortable putting that in there. And I think, again, the question here of appointing members to the committee will be a matter for council anyway. So it's a question of guiding council in that. And so treat it as a tool, really. It doesn't confine members to strict gender balance, but it encourages and turns members' attention to, in appointing membership, considering gender diversity, and I think that that's not inappropriate.
Thank you. So technically, it's helped. The wording's been helped by staff, so therefore they can interpret, and it can be inserted at item 3.1. On page 174 as an alternative to the current wording, which I think is the intent. Is that correct? So an entirely new wording for item 3.1. Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak any further to the amendments?
No, thank you.
I'll put it to the movers. Mover happy to incorporate the change.
Yes. May I ask a brief question before you do that?
Yes.
I am just trying to find quickly, and I believe it was the Audit and Risk Committee's terms of reference where we had the same conversation and we came up with some words to reflect this. Because I remember quite specific conversation. I'm almost certain it's the Audit and Risk Committee.
For consistency.
For consistency, I can only find that June, not 2019, in terms of reference, which says one must be a man, one must be a woman, and that created a conversation here in the chamber around some better words. The question would be, could someone maybe provide those words before we vote on this, so there is some consistency to
CEO.
I could probably hunt around if members gave me a few minutes. Through you, Mayor Lachlan, I have a concern that we might not have actually resolved that issue at the time. My memory is that there was some direction potentially from council in terms of ensuring that future policies or future terms of reference reference non-binary outcomes. But I can't recall whether it made it into the terms of reference or not. If you give me a minute, I'll see what I can do. So
I'm almost certain it was the Audit and Risk Committee.
I don't have any recollection of it, councillor. So,
I have something about.
Well, that's me, it
a
needs to go
thought
through all documents.
with the-
before it goes to treacle, councillor, do you want the CEO to find the policy wording for consistency or?
Or the other option would be that the amendment might just say consistent with
Existing.
policies, and that probably
Existing.
takes the pressure off the CEO
Yeah.
right now.
I'm happy to leave it open for 3.1 to be reviewed in line with current language around gender diversity in committees and.
It's a policy. It's, if we're going to do that, we would bring it back, dare I say. I think it's not good governance to say to staff, go and fix it and we'll trust you. It's better that we state what our terms of reference are.
Could we state the intent consistent with other?
I don't.
intents and other policies?
My recommendations as chair is no, we should state it really clearly what we think it is. Rose, brief adjournment in 2 minutes while the staff look for that. Seems like that's what councillor wants.
What's that?
Apologies.
Back in February.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry for being thorough.
Well, it could be the other one's not good enough.
We might be, I just think we're going to end up with 5 variations.
This could be the best one.
It could be.
Yes, but Mark is correct. You definitely address the non-binary question on the resolution. We're just not yet. Or whether you said.
I don't like the term non-binary because that
Well, I
it's
don't,
also, it's also exclusive.
I've never said non-binary, I've said diversity. Gender
Yeah,
diversity, so then you're not specifying anywhere,
Yes, I agree.
but it just needs to be a consistent approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's, yeah, I guess it's a thing, I mean, it's read, so, because it originated.
Yeah, and that was valuable.
That was valuable.
But now, the plan- Because we can't do it all.
I'm happy.
If we don't like it,
Well, it's not way up. Well, I'm happy. to use some versus the-
so in the way, community activation is going to be free enough.
Because that's
Oh,
why
and it's-
we went into.
On there.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if we're looking at this, like,
It's all
sharing, but
Yeah.
You
can go.
That's a current.
So, yeah, look, I'd be open to discussing. Not to discuss it outside. But just, yeah.
Future deputy mayor. Future deputy mayor. Former deputy mayor.
I would have left it on the floor for them to. up or down. Hard to do it, but we know who the actions are. We need to do it. It's in our community.
Oh, no, hang on, you're on the other side.
It should just be what's happening. Anyway, I mean, this is. Yeah, and it may be contributions of things that we've already done that add to that.
Yes.
It obviously, they just finish.
Oh, yes.
It will have to be the budget. For example, which is talking to the auditor about. Because I think.
Yeah.
It's talking about changing. You know, with cost saving. It's also carbon trading.
Yes. Yes.
And environment impact.
Yeah, it's not before that. It's when we came back to council asking me to direct the point. It was then. And we referenced in terms of reference. Yes. It wasn't that. It was before then.
Nothing do properly. It's just not. It's just quicker. But it does. But the thing is, it's almost like the Department of Reports. For example, it may be that we put Adelaide into for the streets because they've already, you know, that they've already specified the action before investigating options. But for example, the whole thing of putting a charging station downstairs, why would we do it? We've got how are there any petrol stations? They should be done. They should be state and federal legislation that mandate, if you build a new.
Yeah. Why else should we go?
But so why should you be able to put in a new petrol station and not put in a legal charging?
Enjoy stuff.
Why is it all again?
No.
For us.
It's gonna be huge.
You have some time, but
I do.
you just did not use your time effectively then, councillor.
I did.
You're like a school teacher.
Should I take a call on my?
No. No.
Those are rhetorical.
So, while we're out of the meeting, the process went that, we came to you in December last year. And we put it to you that, Corinne's position on the committee was coming to an end. We put it to you that we go to, and consider, going to the market to find a replacement member. We brought to you the terms of reference at the time, identifying the fact that could happen, but we also invited you to consider the possibility of direct appointing Corinne again. During that debate, the question of the binary nature of the terms of reference came up. The discussion, and again, this is more my gut, because this is not obviously in the minutes. The discussion proceeded along the lines that, when we next reviewed the terms of reference, and they're not due for review yet, they're coming up for review, that we would consider non-binary language consistent with other terms of reference, but that did not make it into either the resolution in December or when we eventually appointed Corinne in March following a process. That was never reflected in the
We haven't
minutes.
yet reviewed. the
And we
terms of
haven't
reference.
reviewed the terms of reference, so right now there is no language. to
That,
follow.
that makes more sense to me, yeah.
That's as far as
I
I can
remember
gather
the
after
conversation,
5
but
minutes of
I
quick
forget
research.
Okay, we will resume.
So these could be the best way.
We lost by one vote.
Well, that supports more Alison's terminology.
We will resume by, I'll sum up the CEO's response to a search for everything was that when we were considering the chair's reappointment to the audit committee, we considered the gender balance and considered that the terms of reference could be worded better. But we have not yet changed those terms of reference for the audit committee or anywhere else. This would be the first, see, I'm writing, so this would be the first such change.
To my understanding, yes, but I'm not intimately familiar with every single terms of reference.
That's the only other time I believe we've discussed it. So I'm fairly confident saying this would be the first such change. And therefore, councillor Groot, to answer your question, there's no consistency yet. This would be the template for that going forward, should we support this amendment. So question for you then, councillor, is having your question answered, would you support this as an incorporation or not?
It's a yes or no, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so thanks. It's good.
I can't remember the last time I asked.
That's my line.
Yes.
15 years and 9 months.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's 2 yeses. We'll then seek the leave of the meeting to incorporate the change. All those in favour? Against that change, it's unanimous that the change is thus incorporated. Thank you. Are there any further debate on the actual motion? Councillor De Backer, you had the floor. Did you wish to say anything more to the motion?
Look, just thank you for incorporating the change because I think it's, language we have to think about with all our terms of reference and policies and things. Just further to the Strategic Planning Development Policies Committee. Now, I have been on it for quite a while. It's a really interesting, it can derive from, I guess, some of the planning changes that happened. Certainly, I think there are, like with any committees, looking at the purpose of committees and why they exist and how people access information and all that kind of thing. So look, I'd appreciate other people's views around the floor about the current committee and what their thoughts are.
Thank you. Any further debate on the motion?
So did I?
Yes, moved. Councillor.
It was a long time ago.
Just from my perspective on this as well, Councillor Groot's posed a good question. Why do we need it? We don't need any committees, to be perfectly frank. We don't need any other than what the state government think that they tell us. Well, I don't think they tell us we need, which is an audit committee and a CEO performance review committee. I think they're the only two mandated. This was mandated, but is no longer. Is that right, CEO?
Through you, Mayor Lachlan, you could argue that a Disability Access and Inclusion Committee is now probably required by legislation. But yes, it's
different kind of call. Yeah. So every other committee we have is at the discretion of the council. The reason that I think this one is worthwhile is that planning decisions make a profound difference to the shape of the community. And good planning policy leads to good cities, and bad planning policy conversely leads to bad cities. But it takes a huge amount of time. Voters are incredibly interested in the value of their property as their primary asset, building their wealth, and bad planning policy attacks that value, and good planning policy increases that value. However, not everybody as an elected member likes to discuss these items in detail. And these items relate to residential planning code, character descriptions, heritage overlays, what heritage process should be entered into, what's the impact of the new planning and development code and how that interfaces with our old development policy, where initiatives might be if we undertook a code amendment, where we should write to the minister about thinking things that should be changed. These topics are, there for those interested in those topics who want to get their heads around. The committee cannot make any decisions, but it's happy, from what I've seen, to discuss those items in depth and make cogent and reasonable recommendations to council. We've seen from the last round that some of those were about actions to go forward with, and some would say, let's do nothing because we've done all the consideration and we don't think anything more should be done with this particular idea. I think that adds value to council and it stops all of us having to go through these topics. And if I was really frank, I'd say some of the elected members around this table are interested in discussing these matters in depth. And I think those who aren't interested should be really grateful for people who are interested and happy to do it at arm's length and come up with their best summary going forward. So I think it's a worthwhile committee, a bit like the Indi Kamunga committee. It's a specialised area. Let some people do the work and then bring forward the things that really matter that have to be done to full council for decisions. So I'm happy with the incorporation as well, I should say that. Any further debate on this idea, on this motion? If not, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, we had some other off the table sort of discussion in the break that as well. Maybe it's important for all members of council to actually have the opportunity to learn and gain the experience and knowledge that comes from having such a discussion as a committee. I note that 3.5 membership, keeping in mind that membership is members of council and not independent ones, and the staff may have these experience and knowledge, and it says that it's highly desirable, but I really question really why have that put in there as membership as well. Because I'm certain that quite a few of us that were members over the years might have possibly part of some of that. Yeah, so I think I most probably then formed the view that I'm prepared to go ahead and support this at the moment, but then leave it then perhaps to an incoming council to decide whether they prefer to have this type of discussion as a workshop like we do with most other areas of being an elected member, or whether you have this committee, which in my view, unless you have people that are elected that are track engineers and social plans, etc. You know, so I'm really just at that stage. I'll support it now, but with a view that perhaps an incoming council can further discuss the value of having a committee like that, or whether it be valuable to have it more as a workshop area for the whole of that committee to be able to have an understanding of these issues.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Just trying to work all that out.
We have an SPDBC. We have terms of reference.
I know the outcome. We've got 10.8. I shouldn't question a unanimous vote. So it's a strong answer. Staff love those things. It's very clear. 10.8 LGA AGM proposed item of business recommendations on page 177. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Look at it like you're reading it for the first time. That's really distressing for me. Deputy Mayor. Even if it's true. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, certainly, dear to my heart about this whole thing that's experienced by the city of Prospect and other councils by these things.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Backen.
Can we protest or have placards or anything that you would like us to
Good.
get your attention?
The question, the answer for me is sure.
Okay.
Yes.
You have
Just don't make it an amendment.
you have to make your own, you can't for.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Bring your own cardboard. Do I have any further debate for this item? Councillor Group.
With the motion, I'm just interested to know whether other councils are experiencing similar issues to us in this regard and the likely level of support for this.
Sorry, I'll answer that. I'll pitch to CEO. I'm aware that others do, although the renewal assays engagement across councils is sporadic. It's not even. So from time to time, they own allotments in councils and then they sell them off. So the Caroma site in Norwood, one's now been sold on. So the new person is now paying the rates, but while they held it, Renewal SA would have been sending their money to Treasury. It's not really skin off Renewal SA's nose because they have to pay it anyway. It's a Treasury decision, it's a government decision or a cabinet decision. They would have more impact on Southern Vales and the northern councils than the inner councils, where they would hold vast tracts of land that are farmland being converted into residential. So there's a point at which the rating value of it would go through the roof. And that may or may not be a bigger issue for those councils because formerly that council was getting money as a sheep paddock. And so it hasn't yet seen the money come through as residential. So it's a moot point. For us, we were getting money and now it's being taken away from us. That's a big difference. That issue in itself, I'm not sure there'll be many councils about that specific issue. However, the staff recommending we add this to a pile of other issues, such as the mandate that if a community housing body wants a 75% rate remission, we have to give them a 75% rate remission. Whereas previously, if it was owned by the Housing Trust, they would pay 100% of their rates. There's quite a lot of that going on. Yeah. Sorry, CEO, anything further?
Through you, Mayor Loughlin, now you added the extra point that I mentioned. A lot of councils have Renewal SA land banked in their areas, and some of those classic examples that tract at Aldinga, which is about to be developed by Renewal SA, huge tract of land, big value. Two differences with that. One, it's been in stake of ownership for a long time. So they haven't lost the rates on that, they've just never had them. And so the difference there is, again, with the transfer of ownership, we've suffered a loss in revenue as a result of purchase of that land by the state. And then the other thing, which I think sticks in the craw here, is that they are actually paying Renewal SA through competitive neutrality payments, are paying a rate equivalent payment to the Treasury. And that's the, I think, the thing that's really an issue here. The second thing, of course, is there that again, some of those councils, like Onkaparinga, for example, a tract of land like the one at Aldinga, as a percentage of their overall rates revenue, you're not talking about a single property impacting other ratepayers to the tune of 0.25% every year. That's what we're talking about here, because we're a smaller council and it is a very high value piece of land.
Thank you for the question. Wish to speak to the motion?
No.
Do any further speakers to the motion? Apart from Deputy Mayor, to sum up, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll no doubt pen a letter from me to me. It's getting in quick before the election. 10.9 delegation register review 2022 recommendations, page 183 and 184. Somebody happy to move it in its current form. Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
I've actually read it and I'm quite happy with it. It's putting the delegation to the fire, transport, so I'm more than happy to move it.
Fantastic. And I shouldn't say fantastic because that's another word for unbelievable. I'm going to say that's acknowledged, Councillor. Excellent. Excellent.
Delegate.
Incorrect. Second, me would not enjoy all these delegations. Thank you. Particularly with no staff. I'm a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to speak to it? Any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you for staff for going through that, checking all that. Very, very important work. General business of an urgent nature. Is there any?
A
Councillor Harris.
question first. I am going to move a thing about thanking Brendan. Will I do it in my report or do I got to do it here?
I'm just trying to think,
Because he's going to be
CEO, there's not really another opportunity, is there?
Through you, Mayor Loughlin, you could make a presentation thanking Brendan. It would be acknowledged in the minutes, but it wouldn't be a motion. If members are minded to move a motion, speak now or forever hold your peace, and the mayor will determine whether it's urgent.
So they're the two options. You can make a briefing in which a short note is made of that briefing. Or
okay, well, I'll do it now and then I'll fill in when it comes to the other But I know people will.
I have to test the floor though first, so I have to test whether people agree it's urgent. So if you want to propose your motion, then we can test the floor.
Well, the man's leaving in a couple of days.
What's your motion, please?
My motion will be to thank, and a few other words, thank Brendan for his role he's played in the Ghana movement in the city of Prospect from beginning to end. So that's what I'm gonna do. That's the person, and the urgency comes.
Yep.
Because I think it goes within a week,
Okay, thank you.
if not.
We just get that in writing, just to be, so everyone knows what we're looking at.
Yes, the word end, because it was not over.
Why did I say something right?
But only writing, mate.
Alan, under the, on the words of all the public sector, not in writing.
Right. That's why I've come urging, because I couldn't get the biro out. Thanks and acknowledges the hard work.
So he's lost.
So councillor, can you just check that those are your words, particularly the back end of it?
Hard work, Brendan,
It's a, maybe I could suggest in council's Bindi Kamunga initiative.
Yeah,
Oh,
Is it-
I always get tricky pronouncing some days, so that's why I'm happy.
AUM. AUM. AM. AM.
I've got it here. It's slower.
GKA.
Write it down.
Yeah, GKA, yeah. Initiative rather than movement. Yeah, councils in one area.
Alan, you're crafting this great thing.
I know. I've got.
And the word establishing might be good in front of councils. I think, councillor, if you're happy with that, can you just read that again?
So the council, thank you. No,
No, you are happy with that. It's a great night. Okay, thank you. Right, can I now, I just test the floor whether they are happy for that to be included as a genuinely urgent nature, is not a change to council policy and cannot wait until the next council meeting. So I now seek leave of the meeting to debate this item. All those in favour? I now have got the majority, sorry, that was unanimous. So now, councillor, you've moved it. Do you wish to speak to it?
yes, just briefly, and I do want to point out, it's supporting, asking people to support this in no way puts down the hard work that other people within the council have done, continues to do, and future does. That's a word. But this in particular is because he's leaving, and I have to be honest, and I said it to David the other day, running some of these particular meetings, and I chaired one the other day, and I think we've got more to do. It was most probably the hardest thing I chaired in about 40 years. So this man has worked tirelessly and hard, and when I do get to the board, he was there today with me further away, but he's bent over backwards, he's fallen, he's taken people not being nice to him and all that, but he never sort of looked back in this particular task. And when, and if I say the other bits later, it's time to see now, to me, how important this role is. You know, we do rates, we do lots of things, and they're all important, but this is just so important for the human beings that walk on the Prospect soil. He's just done a great job. And it's going to be hard for someone, but people will do it, continue. And I think he just says acknowledgement of what he's done and a real thanks for helping us to get where we go.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, certainly. I concur with councillor Harris's words. I just wish Brendan all the best for his the future as well. Having had a long chat with him. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers to this item? I will just briefly advise CEOs, just let me know that one of the reasons Brendan's not staying with us is because his parents live in Victoria. They're old, he's worried about them. He's taken the package that was on offer. Unfortunately, that's to our detriment. But he's just recently been advised that his mother's afflicted with COVID and that it's not going well. So he has actually left today to urgently get over there to be with her, knowing that his last day was going to be Friday, and the staff have facilitated that, which is what we would all do in that circumstance. So no doubt that if this gets up, the CEO will advise him of this. We'll be incredibly grateful. But just so you know, that's what's happened. If you pop him tomorrow and ask to see him, he's actually already gone. We wish him and his mum and his dad really, really well. Thank you, and I absolutely endorse this. It's been a tough road, and his patience and respect for this journey has been profoundly useful in dealing with this. And CEO, you note that you've seen it firsthand, and so the people that take this job over, as Alan says, will walk in his shoes and do it their way, but the work will continue. But he's done a great job to get us to where we are. Any further speakers to this item? Councillor Wayne?
That council thanks and acknowledge, is somebody going to ring him, or are we going to write to him, or how are we going to thank him and acknowledge him?
Yeah, I'm happy to write to him, and we'll see, and I'll sort it out. Yeah. Or we could all fly to Melbourne. Is that what you're thinking? And yeah, you have done that before. I don't know why I brought it up. Oh dear. That concludes the, sorry, Councillor Harris, if you wish to sum up. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thanks, Councillor Harris. We now have the reports for information that we'll move on block unless they're withdrawn by anybody for individual debate. Julie Thomas, our investment attraction officer, is here. Should there be any questions around item 12.4? If someone wishes to withdraw that, she's been here all night listening to every word everybody has said. Every word. So does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.1, the mayoral monthly activity report? No. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the community consultation outcomes draft, annual business plan and budget recommendation on page 193? Councillor Groot. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.3, CEO statement on financial sustainability? Councillor Ripp. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.4, the urban corridor group corridor growth report, June 2022? I will. So does anybody wish to move on block item 12.1? Councillor Ripp. There's no speaking to it on block. Could I have a seconder?
Oh, well.
Councillor Harris. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. 12.2, Councillor Groot's recommendation, page 193. Are you happy to move it? Or?
Look, yeah, absolutely happy to move it. And I just had one very small comment I want to make on this. And I think that the information in here is really, really good. It's almost a shame it doesn't form part of the actual business planning paper itself, because there's lots of good stuff in here. I, however, did want to just take everybody to page 236. It's the Prospect Residents Association submission, and 236. And there's a little bit right at the very end, which I thought was kind of interesting, because this is something we talked about maybe 4 or 5 years ago when we started thinking about new council changes and what that looked like. And that was about people hearing what we talk about in council. And the design of this room is not conducive to that whatsoever. And I just thought, you know, it's probably a matter for the new council coming in, but it gives us reason to pause and have a think about how can we make sure when we've got a gutter out there tonight, I have no idea whether people hear what I'm saying or not. I can't hear them talking, so I can imagine that might mean that they can't hear me. But I thought it was a point well made around if we want to try and, have transparency and people listening to us, how do we do that in the way that people can hear us if they're out there? That's a really big one. And I think back to the Sunny's DAP meeting, sorry, and back a few years, aren't I? I was right at the very back listening and I couldn't do a thing. And so, I know it doesn't happen often, but it happens probably often enough that we should think about how we deal with that on those occasions. So I just wanted to raise that. I'm not making an amendment or any changes, or I just think it's something that we perhaps think about, or I should say the new council might want to think about, the CEO's leadership about how we deal with that.
Problems hearing.
The council next to me too can hear us talk. That's the extent of the problem.
Got any money, councillors? Do we have a, thank you, that you're done moving?
Unless you want to say something to what I said, yeah.
I'll take it as a yes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
Not now.
Right, any further debate? Moving on. Councillor Barnett, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, just quickly, I think it's a good point that councillor Brute and the Prospect Residents Association have, and I think it's in line with our disability sort of action plan as well. But I know other councils, we can't afford it, but do have a speaking sort of system, something, or amplification system. So I think it could be worth investigating.
Any further debate? I said a whole pile of stuff in 10.1 in response to this because I wasn't sure this was going to be pulled out, but clearly there's a heap of great feedback in this. That was really well considered, I thought. As always, I love the school stuff and, I respect all the other stuff, but some of it, you always got to weigh up what's, the numbers and the perspective of people. And I think the diversity of what we received CEO this time was terrific because it gives it to us from a number of perspectives. We had a little drop-in session and we had the most we've had for years, which is 7 people. Doesn't sound like much, but as an indicator, it's one indicator that there was a bit of unrest and that was quite a diverse offering of people who came in. And I thought the drop-in approach was very good, although it was over an extended period of time. So for staff, it was, like time-consuming, but it meant that people who, picked on the school pickup or after school or after work all found a time which suited them. And I thought that was a good initiative. So in terms of amplifying what happens in here, I mean, people could speak up. That would help because we are speaking to, people at the other end of the table, or you're down there speaking to those people. And just a bit of respect for the people at the table would work, but notwithstanding, amplification would help those people in the gallery. It costs money. People would stand up. It costs money. And I've always thought that having push button stuff in front of us restricts the flow of how we run the meetings here. It would change the way we go about things. Notwithstanding, people want to do that, then find a budget allocation and do it. And just to note that the CEO knows that the owl is close to falling off a perch. So there's money in the budget to try and find a different answer. So it might be that answer provides part of the solution for us. So
I have to go over the night time and listen to the whole meeting to make sure.
Thank you very much. Any further debate on this item? Councillor back.
Yeah, look, I'm always a little bit not skeptical of the consultation outcomes, but it's kind of we mark our own homework on this, and I actually think that we can always do better. And I'm always cognizant of the fact that we talk to people in our communities that and I know will never put a pen to paper, write a letter, because that's so old school, send a considered email, go into the engagement hub, but they will put a nasty comment on Facebook, and all power to them, or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I still think one of the best community consultations we had a few years ago was we did the traffic light system at a community fair, red, orange, green, pictures, with figures underneath, and that works really well. We got a lot of quick and simple, and so though yes, we're catching more, and we got 7. I also we consider the community feedback, but as elected members, we're also representing our community. And I have plenty of conversations where people say, oh, I'm not, you know, so we are an extension of this as well, because we're plugging into our network. So all things considered, I think we can always do better in this space, and every council struggles with it. But I'm not in favour of marking our own homework all the time, and I'd be really interested to see what best practice looks like. And it might be a budget consideration for the next council to say, how can we do communication and community consultation just that bit better?
Thank you. Any further debate?
Yeah, in
Councillor
terms
Rick.
of community consultation, I remember asking former CEO, how do we capture like people's social media responses as well? And the reality is we don't have the resources, or we're told all the time we don't have the resources to capture or the feedback of all of the comments, and people regularly comment, you know, on social media. It's a difficult one because it is a resourcing issue as well. But like in terms of the thumbs up, thumbs down, you see those likes on Facebook to things, you see comments being mentioned, that they're people giving their feedback, and it's, in a way it's difficult, but in a way in the digital age here, I would argue more people are going to be giving their feedback on online platforms than going by traditional means. We're missing out on capturing so much feedback all the time. Why not? So that's a resourcing issue as well, but it'd be good to look at how we best try and capture some of that feedback going forward as well, because it's going to be critical.
Thank you. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Group, wish to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. So I
Considerably.
look, I thing I didn't say at 10.1 was I think the consultation was really good this year, and I didn't actually say it. I didn't have it in my notes. I forgot. I think that the really difficult thing for us with consultation remains, and as you read through this, somebody says it's black and somebody says it's white, and that's our job to try and navigate through that. And I think that is tricky. The school stuff is always really good, and thank you for still doing that as well. I think that's a really useful exercise. Amplification will remain an issue. Maybe we do stand up again. I remember the good old days. We had a little box we used to lean against, maybe is a better word to describe that. Yeah, but I think it's probably an issue when we have a full gallery, unlike now. Thank you.
Loud speech. Well, that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.3, Chief Executive Officer Statement on Financial Sustainability Annual Business Plan 2022-23. Recommendations 258. Councillor, you wish to move it.
I wish to move it and thank the CEO for the statement and the information. Obviously, in the long-term financial plan, it says on page 259, was framed on the assumption set out on page 41 of the annual business plan. I just wanted to check how we regularly update, I guess, what the process is for keeping up with the rising inflation. Obviously, we framed the budget, it says on CPI, and we see in the column there at 22-23, it's 3.3%. We know it's now 5.1, heading towards 7.1 to 8.5. How do we regularly, or is it done through this budget reviews? How do we regularly keep in check with this? Because we know that is clearly the figures are way out of date, but they're based on the original assumptions. How are we tracking or regularly changing this? Because it's going to be a moving beast.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Birch.
Through the mayor, it's a couple of different processes that happen with this. Obviously, with budget being adopted now, we'll turn it on now to the next long-term financial planning review. That's due to go to the board committee in December. Right. And so we'll be looking into the CPI numbers that have come out at the end of September. And also following that will be the local government price index. Now they're historic numbers, but they start to actually look at the 12 months past. But we do look at those, we might measure them against some of our contracts that we've been able to let. That obviously feeds into our budget review process. But then big thing that we do measure against each year is the Centre of Economic Studies. Adelaide Uni, they provide a forecast for the whole sector in March of each year. So before we set our budget, we use those indexations in order to ensure.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah. I'll leave it there. Obviously, these figures are they're rapidly changing every quarter. I respect that, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch, because clearly 22-23 isn't maybe 3.3. It'll be, I think, 5.1, if not heading towards 8.5. So it's definitely, we're in uncharted times. So it'll be interesting to watch these figures to see in 23-24. I suspect it ain't going to be 2.7% for CPI, and we're framing a budget on it too. So it's going to be an important one to watch. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, would you speak to it?
Oh, happy with the previous speaker.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Rick, just to sum yourself up.
Full stop.
That concludes debate. All those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. 12.4 Urban Corridor Growth Report, June 2022. I withdrew it for comment and question. Is someone happy to move it and get it on the floor? Councillor Harris, would you speak to it?
No, I'm excited to see what you're saying and I have read it and I'm very happy with the new person come along with the report we got.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, do you speak to it?
Yes, I think it's a very interesting report. Yeah, so I thank the author of the report.
Thank you. And further speakers, Councillor Backer.
Look, again, data is always very, very useful, especially like when we're showing growth and dollar value and really coming back to some of the other motions we have on the floor today with our budget and planning. It's the investment in the last 10 to 15 years. It's been phenomenal. That's got us these results, and it's a long time coming. And some of that work's already been done, and now it's time to, I guess, leverage those benefits. And we are in a position where we don't have a lot of money for economic development. So it's almost, you know, getting buy-in from traders and community to go out and do great stuff. We can't do it. I just sent around an email that there's new census data's out today, which is really good. However, you know, having a dashboard like this, a live dashboard would be great. And again, that's probably out of the realm for the next little while, but I'd like to sort of see us there. So we've actually got a prospect economic development dashboard that, you know, sings the song or tells the story we want to be telling, that has some interactive numbers and things like that. So yeah, so thanks for the information. But it would also be good to package it in a way for the consumers in a way that's digestible somewhere on our website or just as a thought.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our officer, by the way, while she is here? If not, I'll speak and ask a couple of questions. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for your work in this report. It is, I agree with previous speakers, really useful information for us to make sure, number one, that we're tracking in the right direction. Is that we are, although it's been quite volatile. And I understand you try to frame this up, CEO, perhaps directed to you, so that we can start having a consistent form of reporting going forward and track trends. Is that how this is structured?
Yeah, I might ask Ms. Thomas to add to this, but in essence, the direction has been to create a report that is repeatable and that can create the opportunity for forward-looking trend analysis. Ms. Thomas.
That's right, yes. Put together quite a bit of data from different sources. Planning is changing system a little bit, has removed, I guess, continuity of data across a lot of platforms, even external property advisors can't see sort of trends because of the platform. This data is based on planning applications, I guess. And so yeah, it's yeah, a bit of work, but good for us to use this as a tracker as well, just to sort of keep monitoring and pushing along our development that already have plans in place, as well as reporting as well. I think to your comment, Alison, it is hard, like property data being published in the open market, it changes all the time, and you have to be quite careful of doing that, I think, as well, and like producing outdated data that, yeah, and so yeah, just have to be mindful of that.
Thank you. And my the second question was that we've got it in front of you, page 270 of our agenda, or not sure what page it is of the report, page 2. There's the little graph there that shows the City of Prospect supply pipeline. To me, that's probably the most important graphic representation of data here. And I think it's fair to say that whatever was delivered in 2021, certainly history, 2022 is probably locked in, can't change. 2023, similarly, it's not already underway, it's not going to be completed in 2023. 24 is going to uptick because of, you know, the Harrington and Prospect Square and Prospect Green, but there's a big dip in 2025. So is that the main focus of your work, is bolstering the 24 potential outcome and then making sure we've got plenty in 2025 coming in? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're gonna see a drop off in 25 to 20. You see a big uplift in 26 because of the USA's big land package, and so they've sort of, that's early planning, 180, we can sort of forecast that, even though some of that will be open to market demand as well, when that lands. But so we try to push that out. Yeah, it is definitely trying to encourage, trying to encourage more development. Definitely. I think the focus from apartments into townhouses, we'll probably see a lot more of that. There's some latest information that's come out today that apartment yields, so like investment yields, they have been negative, and so they're starting to change now. The market's shifting a little bit, and rents will start to increase. So hopefully we see the investor market come back a little bit more, and with some population growth, like with immigration coming back. Like we might see some more growth too in that market. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, I guess our focus is on encouraging more development, probably as well trying to shift focus to commercial rate growth as well. And so redevelopment of some of our there's some large land parcels on Main North Road, and trying to get more rate growth there instead of focusing so much on apartment growth. It's probably where we're at.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Backer, you have a question?
Yeah, I
or
do
you've
have
spoken
a
to?
quick question, sorry. Yeah, it was just quantitative and qualitative information. One of the things I'm always interested in is like quotes from like a real estate agents and those kind of things, and they might not want to be on the record for these kind of things. But so, for example, if we're looking at units, like a 2-bedroom, say, empty nester style unit on Prospect Road in the Harrington might be a very different offering to something that's down on Churchill Road that is for an entry-level buyer or something like that. How do we get that sort of qualitative information, so we don't sort of blanket say, oh, units are on the way down, everyone's going to townhouses, saying, well, the market's really looking for this kind of whatever. So when people come to us, we can say, well, this is what the trends are saying, or this is what real estate agents are saying.
Yeah, well, and there's some more data that you can delve down into. We've got access to quite a bit of data, I guess. And so we've got it's about 50-50 split between apartments and townhouses at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that 49% are in a higher bracket than the lower bracket, like the last year. But some of our future pipeline is like central to like more Churchill Road and that sort of thing, and that's probably lower. I guess that's supply driven though.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
And so certainly, I mean, we can do some more analysis on the sort of the values that they're coming about. We could do some more. But I think it's about availability of land and those opportunities is going to drive that quality.
And one more question, just the build to rent market, because someone had talked about years ago that was something that was up and coming. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few developers about that actually. It doesn't there's a new project in the city where that's just sort of completed. That's high rise. The scale of those developments is what you need to make them work, is from just like market discussions without like deep investigation. You need large scale for that to work.
So our development plan doesn't cater to that scale.
4 stories.
Yeah, which is
allowed them. Yeah, well, I'm not saying it doesn't, but that would be my initial part.
Okay, thank you.
Shortage.
Any further debate? Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I just.
Sorry, your question, because you've already had your seconder.
Right, okay. So my question is on the last paragraph on page 266. One of the talking about asking questions that residents ask is, well, why haven't with all the number of apartments being built, why aren't we able to reduce our council sort of rates? My question is, does that paragraph represent that will be getting $573,044 in additional rate revenue over the 3-year timeframe, 22, 23, 24. So is that the answer to the residents' questions about?
I might take that one if I may. Through the mayor, that's a difficult question, councillor, and really it comes down to the degree to which these new properties require servicing themselves from road revenue. And depending upon the models you look at and depending upon the location, size, intensity of that property, anywhere from 60 to 80% of that rate revenue can be consumed just in servicing those additional apartments. That does mean, though, that growth does give you an incremental gain in terms of your, I can say this, disposable income as a council, and how then you invest that in terms of moderating rate impacts. I mean, we've just been through that experience. Members have seen that we've actually gained 1.07% in additional base revenue this year from growth, capital growth and new assessments. So that, one could argue, has avoided 1.07%, or at least 80% of 1.07%, sorry, more like 20%, but a percentage of that, because of course that 1.07% requires additional resourcing from us as a council, but that is giving, let's say, 0.2 to 0.3% of avoided rate increase, or at least additional income for us to avoid a rate increase or provide better services. The challenge, of course, this year is we've got massive inflation. That means that that's completely consumed. So in ordinary circumstances, yes, any growth includes an amount of money that avoids the need for council to rate higher or the capacity for council to improve the quality of services by that degree in any given year. And I would estimate that for the city of Prospect, it's somewhere around about 0.2 to 0.3% of growth is additional revenue that we can contribute to improving services to the community.
Thank you.
I'll take that as a pretty comprehensive answer. Any further debate, questions? If not, Councillor Harris, wish to sum up?
I'll finish, thank you.
That concludes debate. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for your answers to our questions. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. If you wish to stay for the balance of the meeting, we understand we'd love that, but if not, well, feel free.
Only if you can hear us.
Yeah, well, you probably can. This officer lives in Prospect, so if you could just tune in. Okay, thanks. Moving on. 13 council member reports and briefings. I think Councillor Harris indicated you wish to have a brief us on the repatriation.
Yeah, I could report on the other ones. I've been to the football club and all that, but I actually want to emphasise on today's one, and that's not just because it happens to be a picture of me, but particularly that our mate was there that has now left us. Oh, because he's gone to Victoria. But when you stand there like that, and as I had a human body in your hand. And this is why I really put some of that motion up to thank Brendan for getting us to this stage of where we got. Because when you start to look at, you go out there, and you were there about 2 months ago.
Sorry, Councillor, you might just let everyone else know where you were and what you were doing, because I know, but everyone else is wondering why you're carrying a human body.
I was wondering when
just go back a couple of steps.
I'm not talking about the old days, I'm talking about this job.
I know, but yes.
Okay, today I went and represented us out at Smithfield at Burial, where repatriation of Aboriginal people from the Ghana people and from the Adelaide Plains. And the situation that has happened, they've still got approximately in the museum, Adelaide University and other places, about 1,280 or something bodies or body parts that we've got here in South Australia. Today we buried 258 of them in those holes in the things. And the important part that I found with our walking with the Aboriginals through Prospect came very important, because we live in a society, and we have a white society ever since we've been here, that a lot of these bodies were even just normal burials. They weren't cruel or tortured or burnt. A lot were, but some were just ordinary people in Berwick. But as soon as we start doing developments around the place and building things, the Aboriginal people didn't count, or still doesn't, to be honest. Whereas we went through Centennial past Cemetery, we wouldn't build a road, we'd go around them. So today, to me, made it so much more important of the track that we're going around, because Rosalind is one of the women that we have on our committee, and to listen to her to speak and the way they feel, that I didn't realise that we can be walking here in Prospect, and I've always accepted, I learned to accept that they walked here before us in this same area. They were Prospect residents before we were Prospect residents. They just didn't call it Prospect. But some of them could be buried here. When we built roads and that, we just pulled up their bodies and shifted them. This gives their people the right to be buried somewhere. What happened where I went to Smithfield is basically people from the north and the west. They've also got down Brighton Way, people that from the southern sort of areas and that come. But to me, I just want to emphasise how important I think it is to the track that we're going. That it's just so important that Prospect people will be Prospect people, relevant of their colour, how long they've been here, and everything else. I actually shed a tear today, and I didn't eat their food, and I lost my T-shirt, so I didn't do too good. But just to stand on top of that and watch people, and a girl behind me had a parcel that was that big. You know, I assume was just fingers or something like that. So it was quite a moving thing, and most probably in the 20 whatever years I've been here, is one of the most important things I think I've attended on behalf of the city.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Councillor Harris, for doing that. I was at the first one. I was invited to go to the second one, and I couldn't make it for family reasons. So I'm really grateful that you went. But I actually wanted to share that experience. It is profoundly moving. There are, I was told, 4,000 remains that have been cooped up down in Netley in the museum storage area that they just don't know. They haven't known what to do. They haven't wanted them. They just haven't known. Everybody digs a hole and finds some. Calls the police. Police say, well, there's no active investigation here. And the museum gets them. They've gone, thanks very much. What do we do? Finally, there's a process, and they're moving through it respectfully. This is the second internment. So I'm really grateful that you went and represented us. It's really important to the Kaurna people, as it would be to us. It happened to us. So thank you. Any further elected member briefings? Councillor Back.
Look, just briefly, I had the opportunity to attend a couple of events. The Australian Local Government Association conference in Canberra. I took the place of Deputy Mayor who wasn't able to attend. I think all who attended got a lot out of it, and certainly there was a strong Indigenous voice. We had the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Linda Burney, speaking. We also had Stan Grant, who's amazing, giving perspective not just on, I guess, Indigenous voice, but also democracy generally. He's been a reporter in Asia region, looking at what's happening in the Ukraine. We had the Ukrainian ambassador speaking. It was really powerful, and meeting people from all over the country with united voices for that constitutional recognition. Also, people screaming out for affordable housing across regional and metro Australia. It's a big issue. State and federal need to get their act together and see how we can play a part. I also attended the football fundraiser, and I think we have to remember our groups also are raising money for their projects. So just as the Broadview Football Club and some of our other community groups, and just on a small note, the Canberra Alliance, local group, which is now disbanded, has donated some money to the Prospect Local History Group, the Prospect Community Garden, the Association of Community of Ukrainians in South Australia, and the Prospect Residents Association. So I think we have to remember that even though we work really hard to look at our budget every year, our community groups also raise a lot of money for projects that positively affect our city. So a big thank you to.
Thank you. Any further let the member briefings? Councillor Rick.
It's also just wanted to quickly, I haven't decided to do it as a motion, but just wanted to quickly thank the work that Paul Cody's put in. I know he's leaving as well. I just want to put on note my thanks to him for his work in guiding the community reference group and the project for Broadview as well. And he's done a great job and worked at a quick pace to get us to where we are. And I know, having spoken to a couple of the community reference group members, they've really valued his work as well. And the fact that we are trying to listen and take on board feedback as the process has gone on. So I just want to thank, if you can pass on my thanks to Paul as well, for that, that'd be much appreciated.
Thank you. Further let the member briefings? If not, thank you. We'll move on to item 14, motions on notice of renewal, questions with notice nil. Now move to confidential items. First item 16.1 LGFA loan approval and use of common seal. Recommendations on page 4 to exclude public. Somebody happy to move that way? Councillor Backer, wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Or seconder, Councillor Nguyen, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? All those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Staff move to put us in the game of silence to exclude